Good morning, everyone. Today's Thursday, September 14th, 2023, and we're here for a work session. And as always, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Frank, can you please take the lead?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Frank. As many of you by now may be aware, yesterday the town of Riverhead was advised by our attorney's office and our outside counsel in the matter of City of New York versus the town of Riverhead and Supervisor Yvette Aguirre. The New York City Corporation Council has filed a notice of discontinuance against the town of Riverhead in the litigation related to my state of emergency / executive orders. Since I took office in January of 2020, my priority has been the health, welfare, and safety of all our residents. And in issuing the executive order on May 16, 2023, it was issued to uphold our zoning laws and ensure local resources are not diverted to a federal crisis. The crisis that that New York City is currently facing is a humanitarian crisis at the federal and New York City level, and it should not be a Riverhead issue. I am pleased the City of New York has taken appropriate action to focus their efforts on solving the problem facing the city and not focus their problem on Riverhead. I want to thank the town attorney's office for working diligently on this matter, and I am happy to know that the litigation has now been concluded, and we're going to move on as a town and continue protecting our town and work with our own homeless population of Riverhead. And moving forward, our first discussion item today, it's going to be a lengthy discussions and I think work sessions, so we're going to be here for quite a few hours, but our first discussion is related to the comprehensive plan, for which we have Noah Levine here with us from BFJ and members of his team, and thank you, because I know you're his team, they're volunteers. Joanne Waskey's here, we have the Farm Bureau here, which is great, and I can see that you guys are really engaged, and so Noah, good morning, and can you come forward, and we're going to let you take it from here.
Great, thank you. If you just give me a minute just to get set up, I'll take just 2 seconds. Because we have a presentation, we just want to make sure that it is working.
Yes. So I will ask you guys to introduce yourselves, who you are, what part you play in this effort, and then we can go forward.
Well, you might be able to plug in over here if you need to go that way, a shorter distance.
Devin? How many people we have here from your committee, Noah?
There's 3 of us, and then we have about 4 people joining virtually. So
Okay.
they'll be available to answer questions and various expertise. So just let me just get the sound up just to make sure that. So should we do the sound through? Okay. But you're on mute, so. Okay. Sarah, can you hear us? Or Frank, can you hear us? I just asked you to unmute. Frank and Sarah, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi, I can, no, I can hear you. I can hear you as well. Good morning.
Just bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
Well, quickly, as I get this set up, thank you for meeting with us. Just quick introduction. Noah Levine, I've met with you previously. You know me, I'm a member of BFJ Planning, and then I'll let my fellow consultants introduce themselves.
Brady Bias, LK McLean Associates.
Van Corrado, LK McLean Associates.
Okay. You can
Frank
introduce
Fish
yourself.
from BFJ Planning is here, and Sarah Emily. Sarah, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Sarah Yeagle from BFJ Planning.
Yeah,
And Emily Junker from BFJ Planning.
right.
Okay, great.
Heather?
Heather Trojanowski, Ten River Planning Department.
Yeah, Matt Charters, planner for the town of Riverhead.
And Tom's Community Development.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I have a presentation. I hope you all can see it. What we hope to do today is give you an update of where we are in the process. We've been very busy over the summer, working with various committees, also Dawn's department, just to kind of really find up some of the initial details before we present to you the draft scope for the EIS. And so we wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with some of the ideas that we are looking at before we move forward with those, and as we also develop the comprehensive plan. So today, we'll briefly talk about the process and next steps. We'll talk about our land use approach, and then also the transportation recommendations as will be presented by LKMA. Just a quick kind of caveat on the land use approach. We know that your time is limited here today. We may go through them fairly quickly. We can pause on any one idea. We just want to make sure that we cover everything, and we know that your time is valuable. So if I give any topic kind of less time than it deserves, apologies. We just want to kind of be efficient. So just want to keep that in mind. There will be time for discussion. We also wanted to thank the committee members who've been very helpful. It's a very diverse group who've really been able to give us a diverse range of opinions on all of these items. We are continuing to meet with them, and we'll be setting up meetings in the next 2 months to make sure that the ideas that we present today, as well as other ideas in the plan, are addressed and vetted. The timeline here shows where we are in the process. In September, you can see that little red dot at the top is our meeting with you. After this meeting, we'll have meetings with the committee to kind of touch base about various ideas. We're also working on developing the chapters. We're hoping to have drafts of at least the recommendations first in end of both end of September and October, kind of getting those drafts out to the town board, to the staff, to the committee, just to really test those ideas. These will be drafts, in Word documents. They aren't going to be the final documents. We want to make sure that we hear from you first before we start to polish those ideas and bring them into a format that looks more like a full plan. But just want to kind of give you a sense of where we are. The next big kind of event that we're working towards is the public workshop, which we are hoping to do mid-November. And we're looking at actually the date of November 15th as the date for the public workshop. And at that workshop, we would do a presentation, which would be a lot of the things that we're talking about today, as well as other recommendations, followed by workshop tables. So we would kind of essentially set up tables all around the big public space where people could go and see the information and the recommendations in more detail. And then there would be a report back session, and then an opportunity for kind of public input in the style of a public hearing. This isn't the town board's public hearing, of course. This would be the public hearing for the steering committee, as they're required to have a public meeting before the document is presented to the town board for consideration. So that's kind of our process for the next couple months. We are also have set up regular meetings with Dawn and her department. There are just a lot of things that need to be addressed and cleaned up, and there's a lot of coordination. So at this point, it really does require all hands on deck. So we are going to be meeting probably weekly or every other week, just to make sure all of these little items are buttoned up and that we can kind of be comfortable with the recommendations that we're presenting. So today, just to give you an overview of some of the themes that we'll be touching on, we'll talk about the industrial areas in Calverton and also industrial areas throughout Riverhead first. We'll talk about our initial approach to TDR strategy. We know these two issues are probably the issues that are on the forefront of probably more prominent land use issues that we are dealing with, but there are also other areas that we're looking at, such as downtown, the hospital zone, and then other areas along Route 58, the CRC and PRC districts, hamlet centers, and then there are various other topics which we'll get into. And then, of course, transportation after that. Okay, any questions before I get started?
So, yeah, I have just one quick question. You mentioned that you're gonna start drafting part of this report, the comprehensive plan, so that's gonna start in September. We are in September, so, I guess soon we're gonna start seeing something. And, how long do you anticipate it would take from the time that you start giving us drafts to possibly having a draft so we can send it out to the public and have the public hearing?
So I just brought up the timeline so you can see it here. Essentially, we will have drafts done of kind of working drafts in September and October of the various chapters. So these would be working documents. They wouldn't be kind of the documents that would be the drafts you might post for public review. We understand that anything that we give you is available to the public, but these wouldn't be necessarily the official documents that we would put online for public review. As you can see here, I think we have the first public hearing would be, I believe, in December. So that would be the public hearing of kind of reviewing the plan. That would be after the public workshop. We want to make sure that we hear from people in the workshop so we can incorporate their comments into whatever document is given to the town board. So, November 15th, we hear information, we kind of make revisions as necessary, post that document and give it to you for review, and then, continue the secret process, continue to make edits to that document as we refine it and work with you to make sure that the document is kind of buttoned up.
Great.
Okay, so first, we'll talk about the Calverton area, quote unquote, outside the fence. I think most people know what inside the fence and outside the fence means, but I guess inside the fence is generally, the kind of EPCAL area that's, the industrial park. Outside the fence are the industrial areas in Calverton that are, a little bit closer to the LIE interchange. We know that there are a lot of concerns amongst the community about the impacts of heavy industrial uses in that area. We've heard that from the Calverton Civics and others. And we also know that this area has been, targeted in prior plans as an opportunity for some economic development and growth and jobs and so on. The area is zoned, industrial, whether it be industrial A, B, or C. And so this plan is looking to find some kind of a balance for, between, concern about development and also allowing for some development that is compatible with the kind of rural and bucolic surroundings. So just a kind of overview on the approach, there's concern over development, and so what we're looking at is reducing the allowable built area as FAR. So the total allowable area for any individual parcel, and also removing some of the heavy industrial permitted uses from the allowable uses in this district. There's also a need to preserve more land, and so we see that there is an opportunity to use TDR in the industrial areas. We're also, we understand that there is the need to provide for some economic growth. So can we provide some increased building height? And we know this is a sensitive issue, provided that the visual impacts are mitigated. So this isn't increased allowable area, but just ensuring that if there is an increase in height, that it's pushed much further back from the street, so it is not as big of an impact. And then keeping in line with that, we do understand that they're concerned about the aesthetics of industrial development. So, looking at setbacks, design guidance, and screening and so on to make sure that anything that is done is acceptable.
Hey, Noah, it's Frank Fish. Can
Yes.
you hear us? We can't hear you very well. I think you're not speaking into the,
Oh, you know what?
Mike.
Yeah, you might wanna,
Mike,
Frank,
please.
Frank, is this better? I just moved my computer. Can you hear me better now?
not too, well, I mean, we can hear you, but Sarah just said the same thing in the chat, that if
Yeah, we
you
could
were,
barely
you were,
hear him.
we could
It
hear
might
you
be on
just
the side.
fine until you
turn
got
it all up,
to
Larry.
this slide.
Yeah, then the sound completely cut out.
Can we try something? Can I just try putting the sound on my speakers? And give us a sec. Let me just try one thing, okay? So I guess we'll meet you. Frank, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, that's good.
Can you turn me something? Give us one
Oh,
second. Can you
A little bit of an echo now.
your speakers are speaking? Those speakers? And if I turn this off?
It's the table. It's the table.
We should get a new town hall.
Good idea.
Thanks.
Sorry.
The most it could cost us 20 million, okay?
Sorry,
That's the cap, right?
okay,
That's gonna be the cap.
okay. Frank, I'm gonna speak into the mic, is that better? Okay. Well, I've muted
He
you.
does have the PowerPoint, and he did work on it with you, so it's not like he's not aware of most of what you're talking about.
Okay, so I'm gonna move forward. Okay, so, the big idea really for the Calverton area is to, think about these districts as one unified district. There's an industrial A and an industrial C district, as you can see on this map. The industrial A and C districts are very, very similar. The big differences are, there's a slight difference in.
well, we've got two laptops go was the problem. That's kind of,
I think the folks at home on the recording are getting out of this because of the way it's feedback back here. So if we move that,
am I,
we
should go with the way we always do it, with the second laptop.
Devin, the folks that are on there, worked on this project, and they have the PowerPoint, and they know what's going on.
I was referring to the folks watching from home.
Yeah,
Do you have a thumb drive of this, so that he can plug in?
No, do you wanna, I mean, I have the presentation on my iPad. If Chip does it on there, I can give you my iPad and you can, I don't know if
Present, just don't use this laptop as an audio device at all.
Okay,
Use our own table microphone.
got it. I turned mine off.
Am I on now? Did you unmute me?
You are unmuted.
Okay, so speak into the table mic,
Okay,
they can hear you.
Emily, can you hear me?
It's very faint right now. It was working better a second ago for
Right,
us.
because I had my computer on, okay. Should I grab should I just speak up there? Is that what's happening?
Larry, can you turn the table mics up a bit?
I think he's bringing them a portable.
Yes.
For those at home, we're solving this tech problem. We'll finish this shortly.
Where's the microphone, please?
Can they hear you now?
he
Can you try
is,
that?
but he's.
I just asked, it sounds very faint.
Even now?
If I talk very loudly, does that help, Emily?
We can barely hear you, and I have my volume all the way up. So
It's coming out of your booth, but not the ceiling.
What about the microphone over there? Is it just this one, if you guys speak?
Why don't you try changing your seat to the other side with your computer?
I'll try.
Because you're having problems with the computer,
Emily,
right?
can you hear me now?
Or you could use the podium, Noah, like you were thinking. No.
Yeah.
You wanna come to the podium?
Yeah.
How's that?
Doesn't matter.
Good idea, yeah.
But we'll have to go. That's the problem. To the podium.
Well, just leave it to you, and if it's,
Oh, now we can hear you.
We can hear you now.
you're gonna present,
Yeah.
right? So you go to the, I'll sit right next to you.
We'll soon have a new town hall with brand new equipment.
And new problems.
Yes, new problems, but great problems. It's beautiful, everybody is working hard, and hope to move in.
Oh, are we gonna disband the microphone, please, committee? I'm just don't need it anymore.
Test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
He will be. He will be.
The people at home.
He can't help
You know what I
it.
mean?
Emily,
All we're
Frank, you can
doing
hear me?
is if they're watching
Yes,
They're
we
hearing
can
you
better.
now.
We
He
can
will
hear you.
be, say, come further, bring it up. Yeah.
Can you speak into the mics there and see?
1, 2, 3, 8.
That was perfect.
Comes out to
Perfect.
3.
Yes,
Okay.
Okay, that didn't work.
Good work, Joe. Did you fix it? Did it?
Okay.
Good work.
Okay, so hopefully we're back on track. Okay. Back on track. Okay, thank you. So getting back to Calverton, as I was saying earlier, our approach here is to look at the Industrial A and Industrial C districts, which are very similar. The Industrial A basically allows for everything that is in Industrial C, except it also allows for it's kind of a catch-all for heavy industrial uses. Industrial, let me just go to the next slide. Industrial C has a slightly smaller setback, 30 feet, a much smaller setback, 30 feet compared to 100 feet in A. And so what we're proposing is basically a hybrid of keeping kind of less of the heavy industrial uses, so keeping Industrial C, but increasing the setback that's in Industrial A. So basically, we're calling it Industrial C, it's kind of a hybrid. So keeping those bigger setbacks, but and less impervious coverage, so 60% compared to 70% in Industrial A, and reducing the allowable FAR from 0.4 to 0.25, and then but allowing for an increase up to 0.3 with TDR credits. So it provides a new market for TDR, we think. Also allowing for a slight height increase from 30 to 40 feet, provided that those properties are set back from the property line to kind of reduce visual impacts. The graphic on this slide just shows a concept that we are thinking about called basically a pyramid law or a sky exposure plane, depending on how you refer to it. This shows, the top graphic shows what 30 feet might look like at 100 feet. As you can see, compared to the single-family home in the graphic below in APZ or R80, it visually will look less kind of bulky than a single-family home that's at 60 feet and then goes all the way up to 35 feet high. The idea with this is that if you have a kind of a sky exposure plane, if you go further back, you might be able to then go up a little bit higher. So if you go to 133 feet, for example, then you could go up to 40 feet, which is the max height that we are proposing, at this point. So that's kind of the concept to really mitigate height, but allow for, for some increase compared to what's there now. For other industrial areas that are outside of Calverton, in the more urbanized areas that are, slightly closer to downtown or Route 58, we think that there's a need for thinking about these districts more like light industrial districts where uses can be contained within a building, maybe a little bit less open-ended, and we don't want to provide those heavy industrial uses, but we want to have more transitional uses that are more compatible with the commercial and the residential context which they're in. So we're considering, light industrial district that has additional design standards to limit visual impact, maybe promoting a little bit more of the style and architecture that you see in the surrounding areas. We've shown some examples of, industrial buildings that might look like, barns, just for an example, with pitched roofs. So just wanted to move on to TDR strategies. We are kind of going back and forth with the TDR committee on these ideas, and we'll continue to do so. One of the main things is opening up more districts as sending areas. So that includes the RB80 and the RA80 areas as sending areas. And then the RA80 areas north of Sound Avenue would both be sending and receiving areas. And we know that that might sound a little confusing, but basically it allows for both you know, preservation of farmland, but also, you know, the clustering of some development where appropriate. Also, as I mentioned before, the industrial areas would be a new receiving area for TDR. We were talking about TDR in the downtown area as a way to provide opportunities for home ownership. And we understand that development right now is kind of at the 500 unit cap in the DC1 district.
Yeah, the rentals right there.
Right. And so we think that, you know, there's an opportunity to exceed that cap, but only for home ownership, and perhaps TDR could be a good way to kind of, to use that tool. Say, if you use TDR, you can use it, but it has to be for home ownership.
You know, when you say home ownership, you mean
Condos.
purchasing a house, not a
Market rate.
rental, not an apartment.
Right, right.
Right.
But you're also talking about condos.
Condos, co-ops,
Yeah.
or owning
Townhouses.
property.
Yeah.
Right,
Right.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's correct. The condo or co-op could qualify.
Which there is a need.
Right, no, we understand that.
And people, we do not have, and I've been begging the Long Island Business Institute, somebody to give us a little bit of an idea of an assisted living. You know, we have 14 senior communities here in Riverhead. Our population is aging, including myself, I guess I could say that. And, you know, you own a home, there's no place to go.
Right.
And so everybody leaves, they go to another state, they go up island, and so we have our senior population is older, very transient here. And we're hoping that we are in such need, and you want people to stay in your community, and they want to stay in their community. This is where they grew up, this is where their family is. And so I would, you know, work on that recommendation
Yeah.
on the plan, please.
Yeah, absolutely. We will get to that. Actually, it's the next bullet point. We'll talk about assisted living and utilizing TDRs to promote assisted living in areas close to the hospital along Route 58 and
Yes.
just out the middle road, so we'll talk about that. And also the CRC and the PRC, not the PRF, the PRC zones. Those districts were intended to allow for more diversity in housing types, but the actual zoning regulations don't seem to support that, so we're looking at revising those.
No, before, I'm sorry, before
Yep.
we go that far, I know we discussed in industrial A and C, indoor and outdoor recreation. Am I premature in bringing that up, or?
No, I mean, it's my understanding that that is allowed under the current zoning. If it's not, we can.
Indoor
kind
and
of look
outdoor
at
recreation on A and C? I don't think so.
Well, that's
See.
something that when we
Anyway,
create
I'm
the
just-
code.
Yeah, no, it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Industrial C, it does promote commercial recreation, and I think that, it sounds like that is a, you know, good use for that wider area. So if that's not addressed, we'll look into it, and, you know, that's certainly something that should be.
Okay, great, thank you.
So one of the big ideas for TDR is just the fact that the market is kind of dry for TDR credits. And one, I think this is the kind of big thing in this is, in addition to kind of having these new districts as receiving districts, is changing the transfer formula. So right now, if you have one credit, one single-family home, that would equate to one unit anywhere in the district, no matter what it is. But we think that you might want to have a more nuanced approach. For example, and especially when you're thinking about comparing density impacts, one single-family home has a different impact to assisted living units or to, you know, multifamily units. There's less of a traffic impact, there's less sanitary flow, et cetera. So you could kind of have, that could equate to more units of a different type. So we're also kind of thinking about this transfer formula to kind of adapt to a changing market. So we have a kind of a proposed ratio. We might still tweak this, and we want to work with the TR committee as well as the development committee to understand kind of what is needed to kind of make things happen and to really to kind of have a little bit more of an active market. But what you can see here is for attached homes that are less than 600 square feet, one TDR credit might equal 2 units. For larger attached units, it might equal 1.5 units. So it's a little bit of a nuanced approach. In the downtown DC multifamily, you know, we were discussing the idea of one transfer credit equaling 4 bedrooms. So that could be 4, you know, one-bedroom units or, one four-bedroom unit. But it really is just about the kind of the overall kind of having the scale equate in some degree. And we have a transfer formula for age-restricted living, nursing homes, assisted living, as well as commercial and industrial uses and so on. So we're hoping to kind of increase what you can get out of a TDR credit to make it more valuable.
Could you just explain quickly how these ratios would still compete with the Pine Barrens credits for developers? I mean, just explain how that will have a
they're kind
bearing.
of parallel, and I might rely a little bit on the planners for this, but the sanitary credits are kind of one thing.
Right, I know they're different and distinct, but they're still gonna come at a cost, that's what I'm saying.
They're gonna come at a cost,
Yep.
and it's the cost of development, and so I guess that's another reason for making these credits be more valuable, I guess, because it just, it allows you to do more with less, I guess. Is that accurate? Okay. Sorry.
How do you balance that though? When, like, credits are worth more, you can do more. How does it affect the farmer that's selling them?
It's better because, so if I'm a farmer and I can get, let's just say 3 credits for preserving 3 acres of property. Instead of them only being worth 3 units somewhere else, they might be worth 6 units somewhere else. So if I'm a developer, I would be more interested, I think it raises the market value for those credits.
But then does a developer need to purchase less credits? Does that
So
indirectly affect the farmer?
that's the kind of give and pull, is that they need to purchase less credits. However, the market isn't really working so well right now. The demand doesn't, there's a mismatch. And so you need to kind of find a more balanced approach.
Can you just comment on that? I know.
If we increase the demand, then the supply will be impacted and the value will be more. That's the idea,
Correct.
Yeah.
So we only see it implemented now on a very, very limited scale. So someone will bonus up their yield for subdivisions pretty much like on a 1 credit basis. So you're taking 1 credit from one place and landing it to get an additional house.
You gotta speak louder, Matt.
Sorry. And then, historically, there's been some use for hotels, but that's really it. Commercially, it's not really been utilized at all to increase the square footage. That's why this is getting bumped up in terms of the square footage that you would get per TDR, just to make it more valuable for the developer, because I guess with the market the way it works now, it's not worth it to invest and purchase that TDR.
The Farming Preservation Committee agrees with that, or he's nodding yes?
Oh,
Okay.
he's happy as can be, see his smile?
The more locations we can
Yeah.
use it in, the more attractive it is as an option, and that's the
more land gets preserved.
Exactly.
Because the land that's not preserved right now, particularly in the APZ, it's, it could be developed into residential subdivisions. And just to give you an idea, I believe the TDR residential cap is 500 TDRs. We're at, I think, a little over 170 right now that have been, used. So we're nowhere near the cap, and this has been in place for how long?
And just to Ken's point,
For
we're at
20
0 now anyway, so
And in
everything is better.
We have 7,000 acres left to preserve.
Yes.
That either we have to buy out of our pockets, which is about $425 million. So the better way to handle it is a combination of things, including making TDRs that market hot. And if we can do that, then we've done something. If we need to tweak it as we move forward, I think we can do that, but we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And this is where
Right.
we're looking.
Agreed.
Yeah, it is, you can tweak it, and I think maybe you might want to do that as the market changes. It's a dynamic market, and maybe one market heats up, and so it is, you don't have to think of this as being kind of like stuck in place, which is a good thing, I think, because the market changes.
It will allow smart growth while being able to preserve more land.
Right.
And that's how we have to, that's personally how I feel anyway, that's how we have to approach it.
I just wanted to make sure that they're more marketable and but the farmer still, has the ability to sell more. You know what I mean? So that it's not,
And then you take those tax ratables from the ag land, which is a low tax ratable, and you move it to a commercial property, which is a high tax ratable. So you get that impact as well.
It's a
which is
win-win situation.
really necessary for
Yeah.
us, yeah.
Well, finally, thank you, it's finally being addressed, Bob. I know that you've been pulling your hair for years, and It's great to see it finally being
Yeah,
addressed.
there's a lot of work, you know, that of course still needs to be done, and there are other mechanisms, but we think that this is an important step.
Great, thank you.
So moving on to the downtown, so some ideas, the pattern book, you know, is something that the town has been working on way, you know, prior to us being involved, and you know, it's a worthwhile effort, but that needs to be incorporated into the zoning. I mentioned the utilization of TDR to exceed the 500 unit cap. And then also lifting the cap on upper floors of historic buildings of downtown. So if I'm an owner and I have, you know, this is basically promoting the kind of preservation of existing building stock and allowing them to kind of repurpose those properties. And that wouldn't require TDR from, you know, because we don't want to be overly burdensome, but we want to kind of encourage them to maintain and you know, repurpose their properties. So for the hospital zone, we met with the hospital and understand that they have long-term plans to expand and also think about kind of a more dynamic center that incorporates other wellness and uses such as you know, medical-related retail, childcare, gym, senior housing, etc. And then also some housing for their staff and workers and so on. And so we've just indicated, you know, some properties nearby, and you know, the zoning could support those efforts. So that's what this slide kind of represents: the expansion of the hospital zone, and also the hospital zone maybe becoming a little bit more flexible.
So does a Mercy High School then
Yeah.
eventually fall under the new zoning to match the hospital itself?
Yeah. For Route 58 as a whole, there are things that can be done to provide more guidance for site planning, for landscape, for lighting, for just the streetscape, to make it feel a little bit less like a kind of an auto-dominated commercial corridor with big box stores. It can certainly the look and feel could be improved. And so, you know, we're recommending some guidelines that could be considered. Also revisiting the parking requirements, which appear to be very high.
Very high.
Yeah.
And abused.
There's not a plaza up on 58 that needs as much parking as they all have. We've
Right, and
really
they're
got to
using it
visit
for
them.
storage, and they just don't need it as much, of course. Also, as Supervisor mentioned, assisted living is an important use that we want to make sure that we provide for, particularly in light of people that want to downsize. And one of the opportunities, we were looking at areas kind of in a radius of the hospital. And so this could be along Route 58 and Middle Road, and I just kind of, I think it's Northville Turnpike, and I'm just blanking on the other name. Basically, Osborne, thank you. This in this kind of core area, having an overlay district that allows for assisted living with the use of TDR. So not on its own, but only with TDR. So it provides kind of a market for TDR, but you would be able to get, you know, maybe three or more TDR, three or more assisted living units for every single family
Great.
home.
No, thank you for doing that, and I was just gonna see if we could make that connection, but you're already working on that. And here's a perfect example. I have a family member who's in assisted living in Patchogue, and we love going there because we have parking, we visit. Chase Back is right there across the street, and you got to go all the restaurants, do what you have to get done, you shop, and you leave. And not all assisted living people are contained to their unit. Some of them are able to go shopping and to be part of the community, go to town board meetings, you know, and enjoy the culture. And so hopefully, I see that Mike Florio's here from the Long Island Business Institute. I hope you take this back, especially with the TDRs, but I'm glad you made that connection. That's perfect.
Okay.
That location is ideal too, because it is just what you just said, Madam Supervisor. The location itself, close proximity to the hospital, to the medical offices, which seniors need, shopping, restaurants. That's the ideal location.
Also, we have looked a little bit at the HC and the VC districts, which are your kind of hamlet center areas. we might need to look a little bit more at that in the plan, but also it seems like a lot of these areas are kind of locally specific, and it might be appropriate to do kind of like a hamlet plan to think about, how, what the look and feel of those districts should be, and have maybe more of a neighborhood plan. That might be kind of a subsequent thing after this plan. One thing that we did here was, generally speaking, I think people were more concerned with the look and feel of buildings, as opposed to the use themselves. Not in all cases, but kind of the look and feel. They didn't want it to be a strip corridor. They preferred more of a campus style feel. And one thing that we heard also was, the potential of reducing the potential size of uses. So what we're thinking about is, reducing a single use from 10,000 square feet, which I believe is the max now, to 6,000 square feet, and then consider the maximum number of uses you can have on any one particular lot, so we don't kind of allow for strip style commercial that has a lot of uses. It might not be appropriate in these hamlet centers. Maybe a couple of uses, but not kind of a big strip. And then also some design guidelines that really promote something that is a little bit more at the hamlet scale. So really having parking in behind, and thinking about the streetscape and what that looks like. So, that might be kind of a design guidelines or a pattern book, as, kind of similar approach to what you did downtown. Might not need to be as kind of detailed, but something that provides guidance to developers and the planning board and to know basically what is appropriate.
But why can't we do that with the plan? Because you're gonna have community input, you're gonna meet with the community.
A little more specific, I think, and it would take more time, because I think we want to do public engagement with those hamlets and make sure that they, we have, like when Barry did the pattern book for downtown, there was a lot of analysis about existing inventory, how it got there, styles of architecture, so it's definitely
Okay.
more drilled down.
So it's detailed.
Yeah.
It's detailed, and I think when you do the pattern book, it could all be kind of like grouped into the same process.
Right.
So, create those guidelines, but work with the community to do that,
Okay.
kind of create that plan, I guess. For the RLC corridor, which is kind of the rural, transitional corridor essentially, what we heard was more of a concern, again, about the style of buildings, and they were concerned about some of the commercial uses, but when we kind of tease that out a little bit, it was more the look and feel of those buildings. And so there are design guidelines to make sure that those commercial uses feel indistinguishable from kind of the rural residential uses. So incorporating kind of the architecture, colonial style architecture with pitch roofs and dormers and so on. On Polish Town, again, we did hear concern about future development. So there might also be an opportunity here for some design guidance to ensure that, there's some kind of consistency in style. And then also looking at the Calverton Hamlet Center, there are some HC and RLC, and there's also an industrial district right at where the gas station is. We do see an opportunity for some locally serving retail in that area, particularly if there is going to be some kind of future development at EPCAL. There'll be a need for something, a local place to get, food or shop and so on. So, maybe there is an opportunity for some local growth there, and to think about slightly more, robust hamlet center in Calverton.
I think one of the things we need to think about when we talk about that is, in EPCAL, there needs to be, like all industrial areas will have some sort of restaurant in that services within the fence, so that people are not driving in and out all day long. So
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Because otherwise you're just creating more traffic, making people go out.
It's a good point. The CRC zone is a residential zone that's located kind of just east and north of the downtown area for the most part. When you read the zoning intent in the zoning code, it says it's intended to allow for more housing types other than single-family residential, but when you look at the zoning, it really just allows for 1 acre, zoning, which is single-family. So, we're looking at maybe providing for more housing types, smaller units, and maybe clustered, and this could be an opportunity for TDR. So considering up to 4 units per acre with use of TDR. And one zone that's kind of a comparable is the MRP district. I've shown a picture in the bottom which just shows this density might be slightly higher than that. We'd have to look and see what that is, but kind of clustered development, smaller homes, and it's an opportunity for TDR essentially. Similarly, the Conic River Community, the TRC district, the intent of the district is to allow for an array of residential, commercial, and recreational uses. However, no residential uses are actually permitted in the code, so there's a mismatch there. So, and there are residential uses, existing non-conforming uses along the corridor. So what we're promoting is, the allowance of some residential, provided they are pushed closer to the street and away from the river, so as to preserve that sensitive, asset, and having some design guidance there, but also allowing for densities that might be able to encourage some use of TDR. So something similar to CRC. Moving on to other issues of vertical farming, the industrial zones, the permitted farming, the vertical farming should be considered as a permitted use. We can look at that. One of the concerns that we've heard is just the look and feel of buildings in some of these areas. And then when we get to APZ zone, we have heard that this is kind of an essential component of existing farm use and also future farm uses as farmers continue to evolve to changing markets. Vertical farming is kind of a necessary, could be a necessary component to help them. And so, that could be allowed, provided that there are standards in place to control size, screening, height, and et cetera, so that, it's not kind of a massive building visible from the road. If it's pushed back and if it's treated in the appropriate way, it might be appropriate.
So can you add in this section here, agrivoltaics, please?
Sure.
So that's included, thank you.
Just give a little more specifics in terms of so maintain farming in the future. It's more or less, instead of seeing crops grow, talking about more complex industrial buildings where it's being done inside.
I wouldn't say industrial buildings, but maybe trailers or box containers, yeah. And the big question is, the bottom here is whether Ag and Markets, New York State Ag and Markets, is going to allow it on sterilized land. I think that still remains to be seen, but I believe that on regular agricultural full development rights, it is allowable, and they've made a comment or made a statement about that several times already. So
yeah, it's kind of that ruling is a little bit out of our hands, but it's an important question to kind of monitor.
They allow greenhouses on sterilized land,
Right.
So these essentially are vertical greenhouses.
Right.
So, and again, that's an ag and market question, and nobody's gonna build, massive structures.
But how do you decipher though, the greenhouse from an industrial building, like what Ed Wettering has on his property is the complexes? Is that the future of farming, or is that?
Well, I think for now, the sterilized land question is a good one. It's harder for us to address. I think we can address kind of the base scenario of what you can do on a normal property, and provide some coverage, a percentage, whether it's 10% or something, that what the setbacks should be for those properties and visually what they should look like, so it's doesn't look and feel like an industrial,
So to your point about the 10%, if it is indeed sterilized property, and there is a covenant that goes back to Suffolk County or to the town, 10% would be the allowable lot coverage for accessory agricultural buildings. So even we haven't gotten a decision from them yet, but even as it says in their contracts when they sign to sell their development rights, that they would still have 10% allowable coverage. So if you had a 100-acre piece, you're still talking about 10 acres of buildable area. So,
Do we have any idea how much sterilized land we have?
It seems that the sound has cut out again on our end.
The sound cut out.
Do we have an idea how much sterilized land?
Anne Marie will have.
probably what we say for farmland, at least, it would probably in the 10,000
Really?
preserved farmland.
There's probably now 7,000 to 8,000
Yes.
acres of preserved
Well, I think we're like.
And that's
I
just
knew we were
farmland, that's
like
not open
halfway.
space. Right,
Fully farmland.
Right.
Open spaces.
different
It's a
ballgame,
different
yep.
discussion. And that has to do more with the easement language for each parcel and how it was preserved.
Right, that's what I was getting at before, yep.
Hey, Noah?
Recording in
you're on?
progress.
Oh, wow.
We lost it.
Why did it just, what happened? Okay. Uh-oh.
It's exactly 11 o'clock.
Anne Marie,
What does that mean?
we asked the question, I don't know if you heard it, how much sterilized land we have here. So I think that would help us in the direction we want to go, once we ascertain the amount, and possibly if it's clustered somewhere, where it is. I didn't mean to, I know you have to do research, but if you just give us an idea.
Yeah, we have a map that depicts it all.
Oh, great,
Through the purchase of development rights, over 2,000 acres of farmland
okay.
and approximately 750 acres of open space. In addition, as a result of our clustering, we have several additional 100 acres of farmland and open space. And it's all, I have it all depicted on a map for you.
No, can you provide Noah with that? So,
I believe he has it.
oh, yes,
I provided the update to the Community Preservation
That's right,
Fund
yes.
project plan.
Okay.
That was just about a year ago, the town board
okay,
remembers.
great, thank you.
7,000 to go.
Yeah, 7,000 to go. That's a big, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of money.
I'm trying, it's, can you sign back in to it? Apologies, I'm just gonna kind of continue to move forward.
Yes, go ahead.
And I apologize for the technical
Yeah,
difficulties.
because we have a pretty hefty,
Yeah, I know, and
Session, very long
I
session
apologize.
No, do you have a copy of this? You just read off of this, you don't.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of walk through. So basically, moving on to solar. Right now, solar is allowed in any industrial district. And because we are proposing kind of a slight reduction in coverage for industrial A and C, what we're thinking is that the coverage requirements, impervious coverage requirements, could also apply to solar. So basically, they would just have to abide by the setbacks and the coverage for those districts. And so this might be, slightly reduction in the kind of gross allowable square footage that would be kind of, that you could, where you could accommodate a solar facility and.
Another TDR opportunity?
I don't necessarily see that as a TDR opportunity. We could look at that, because,
I mean,
it's
if we
really
use
has.
cubic feet and it was only like TDR opportunity,
Right,
so I think we should look at that as well.
okay.
Thank you.
The next
Because
one.
we have 7,000 of them.
The next one is just short-term rentals. We understand that the town is looking at the possibility of reducing short-term rentals for certain areas that might be a little bit more tourist-friendly, such as the downtown and maybe areas near the waterfront, as a reduction from, the 28-day minimum to 2 weeks. And so, that's something that we understand that the town is looking at. For agritourism, consider having a permitting process for private special events of certain size, and then also better defining the building size allowances for event space, so kind of controlling those uses. And then other areas, this is just kind of minor, for marinas. There are some marinas operating in residential zones. They've been doing that for a long time, providing some mechanism in the zoning to help them become conforming if they choose to do so. And, so that might allow them to, kind of expand their uses, rebuild their properties if, in case of a dire situation, and just helping them become conforming. Our A80 district, there's a slight nuance in the properties with frontage on Sound Avenue that they don't actually have the same ability to do farm processing according to the zoning code, even though this may or may not be occurring now. And so just cleaning up the zoning code to allow farms to basically do the same thing on the north side of Sound Avenue as what they can on the south side of Sound Avenue.
No, back up, just one thing on agritourism, when you have better defined building size allowances for event space, I would like to add in there sound mitigation,
Okay.
the size of the building, and, that I think there needs to be sound mitigation requirements. But then everybody's happy, right?
That's right, good right there. Okay.
Okay. And so I'm going to pass it to LKMA just to talk through some of the transportation recommendations.
Okay, you all have copies of this, so it's pretty easy to follow along. What we try to do here is summarize the key transportation recommendations. We initially presented these at the August 8th Steering Committee meeting, and they were presented in a matrix table that we have copies of if you're interested. And the highlighted recommendations are evolved from this table. They're highlighted in yellow, but I have copies of that available. But we're going to go through the key recommendations that we proposed at that meeting.
Do we have an electronic copy of that so we can put it up on the website? Because it's part of today's,
Electronic copy of the,
I don't
it's okay,
have
we
it.
don't have to have it now, but if
Yeah.
anything
Oh,
that
yeah, I
gets
have one.
presented, we're supposed to put it
Yeah.
up, so,
Yeah.
great.
I printed this from that electronic
No
copy.
problem.
Okay, so first slide, we talk about roadways. This is the first category at the top of the slide, and the first subcategory or subset of that is townwide pedestrian travel. We recommend conducting a townwide walkability survey using the NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration checklist. Very good checklist for determining whether or not you need safety improvements, such as crosswalk improvements, or later on in the presentation, we'll talk a little bit about sidewalk improvements. Prioritizing is underlined because it's very important. As a town highway department, for example, you get requests for crosswalks, you get requests for sidewalk installation. Unfortunately, if there's an accident where a pedestrian's walking on the side of the roadway and gets struck by a car, you get sued. If you prioritize, after you do a townwide survey, prioritize the locations where you want to implement these safety improvements in order of relative to the funding that you have, because you don't have enough money to do all of these locations. So once you prioritize, you really kind of set yourself up for protection from a lawsuit, because you say, I'm going to take 1 through 27 and do those this year, and the next the following years, for example. Next subcategory, Route 25 in general, Middle Country Road. At the Edwards Avenue intersection, we talked several times about the state coming through with a project to realign Edwards so that there's no awkward offset through as you cross that intersection, and installing left turn lanes on all approaches. That project, as far as we know, and we checked recently, is still on track to go out to bid this fall, with Edwards Avenue and 25 prioritized. There's other intersections in it, but the state is prioritizing that location first. So that would be under construction in the spring, if the bids are good and there's no other delays, which there shouldn't be at this point, because we're very close. The Route 105 intersection with 25, we talked about in the past about delays at this intersection, particularly on 25 eastbound. As you're approaching the intersection, the right turn lane to go south on 105 is not long enough. So the cars wanting to make a right, back up, they back up onto the through traffic, and that causes delays. Similarly, in the opposite direction, the opposite movement of coming north on 105 and making a left turn, that left turn lane fills up often, and there's probably a need to double that left turn lane, have two left turn lanes at that point.
Just on that note, so heading east on 25 and then and then to go north.
So I'm talking about the right turn lane to go south.
Heading west,
but
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Heading west to go
Yeah.
north?
Yeah, on 25 and 105. Just what you're talking about, right? The right turning lane is small there, you said.
To go south.
No, this is the eastbound coming out of
Oh, okay,
downtown
I'm
to
sorry,
go
I got
south
it.
on 105.
In front of the farmer's market.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, which causes a lot of delays.
It's, yeah.
Yeah.
So can I just ask, like, the budgetary aspect of, like, so when we go to implement these things, so you have now, in this particular case, you've got a state road and a county road. So is it, when we update our master plan, is it that, does our planning department schedule meetings with the county and the state, or how do you begin to implement these things? Just because, just that aspect of how it begins, I'm just curious of the process that, but also, when we talk about our budget, so we're putting our budget together right now, which will be passed in another month or so. This project gets completed by July, hopefully, right? We're done and.
Oh, yeah,
on
well
track,
before that.
okay, right? So we're not allocating any money for next year to begin this, so is this now a process that begins in 2025, like sidewalks and upgrades and things, and how do you get to that? So is there a discussion, do we plan, do we put some money in the budget, do we begin to bank something so that we're on track? Or in other words, when we pass this, do we sit idle for 6 months and say there's nothing available?
I would just,
Do you know what I mean?
from the grant point of view, right, these plans give us the basis through which to
apply.
ask for grants, because we
Okay.
know what we need, and so that's just one aspect.
And by the time I think you're finished between all the public hearings that you have to have, the code changes, it could be end of next year that we see a final.
Well, we do have a little bit of money for Main Street right now to do
Yeah.
some of this from DRI, but like, we'll be continuing to apply, obviously.
Yes, as Dawn said, if you've got identified locations where you need improvements in your comprehensive plan, that's an advantage. When you apply for a grant, as opposed to a municipality that says, hey, I'd like to do something at this intersection, you already established this as a priority in your plan. So you would get a leg up in terms of competing for grant money. Some of these are very competitive, some of these programs. In this case, we're recommending that the state and the county undertake this project, because it's a state and county road.
It is.
And we're gonna recommend that. On the last slide, I talk a little bit, and you'll see it, about funding sources, and also about the Transportation Improvement Program, which is a 4-year program of transportation improvements. Every project, every municipal project on the tip, they call it, that's funded, needs to be on the tip first. It needs to be on the statewide tip. But I'll get into that a little bit more. But in this location, we're recommending you should say to the state and county, this is a problem, your roads, you guys should get together and put it on the program to get it done. In the original chart that we handed out, we had some timeframes, short or long, and who might be responsible for funding it, but that was too much information to put on the slides. But that'll be in the final plan. Another add-on is pedestrian safety on Mill Road on 25, between Mill Road and Rainer Avenue, west of downtown, to do some pedestrian and safety improvements at that location. On the next slide is all devoted to EPCAL. In 2016, the applicants produced a generic environmental impact statement, and it talked about the ultimate approved plan at that time. Now, we understand there's been a public meeting where the plan is changing, and some of the uses in the plan are changing, but that has to be resolved. But there needs to be an implementation plan for EPCAL roadway improvements based on the revised uses, the responsible party, and the funding and the schedule. The initial GEIS talked about 2 phases, and Ben Corrado here can correct me if I'm wrong, because he's reviewed that in detail. 2 phases of improvements, including major widening on Route 25 and signal improvements at signalized intersections and new signals as well. There are so many improvements for adding lanes on 25 that they almost blend into the next location. It makes more sense to do add a lane in each direction. So that's leading up to a discussion where the lane in each direction should be a regional issue. This ties into so much traffic on Sound Avenue. This ties into traffic on other roadways, other local roadways, to avoid delays on Route 25 and to actually accommodate some of the EPCAL improvements. So we're saying that for a nearly 5-mile distance from William Floyd Parkway to the beginning of the EPCAL, actually to the entrance of EPCAL is about 5 miles. So to add a lane in each direction. The state should be involved in that. The state already owns most of the right-of-way of that. There's very few private land that needs to be accommodated. A discussion needs to be had with DOT that this road needs to get on their transportation improvement program, and the state, the applicant, has to participate as well, but this all needs to be worked out. It really, to get traffic off local roads and onto a state road where it should be, and also to accommodate truck traffic that's going to be generated by EPCAL. So instead of coming on Route 25 without improvements, the trucks could get off the Long Island Expressway at William Floyd Parkway, come north, head east on the state road, and get to EPCAL without even touching a town road. We also looked at an option of going south from EPCAL via Connecticut Avenue over the Long Island Railroad and connecting to the expressway in that manner with an extension of the expressway service roads from County Road 111 east to that point. That could be done, but there are both environmental issues in terms of wetlands impacts, which are probably significant. There's some residences on Connecticut Avenue north of the expressway, between the expressway and the railroad, Long Island Railroad that goes through there. And there's also Pine Barrens, core lands that would be involved. So there's a lot of, obstacles there. I mean, that was considered an option, but that doesn't look like it's as feasible as improving Route 25 as a way of handling EPCAL traffic. Right? The state needs to be involved. A meeting needs to be held with the state, try to get this thing going in terms of the same context that EPCAL is going to develop as well.
I should say, though, that the DOT is like, to your question before about coordinating with the agencies that have the responsibility for these roads, the DOT is not going to entertain a project on 25 unless some plan for EPCAL is brought to them has a chance of going forward. They've been sitting there watching this too. They've been contacted about this, and they say, well, when you have a development plan for that project, for that property, bring it to us, and then we'll look at the traffic implications in that regard. But that's where they go to hide, right? Right? Because they're not going to put it. You're talking about tens of millions of dollars for that improvement, and they're not going to prioritize something like that for some vague future possible development at EPCAL, right? So that's kind of the way that's got to happen. And also what Ray was saying before about the mitigation plan. The mitigation plan was done by VHB, and they did a good job because they made it flexible with respect to development on the property. They made it flexible. They made the triggers for the mitigation based on traffic generation from the property. So it really doesn't matter what happens on the property. It matters how much traffic gets generated by what happens on the property, and then those mitigations get triggered. So it's really still a very viable mitigation plan. It doesn't really need to be revisited except in the context of how it gets implemented ultimately. Who does it? So
I mean, there's, you guys take, when you're doing the whole plan of that particular stretch, we're talking about 25 and Wading River coming into Calverton, the National Cemetery alone, so Calverton National Cemetery, you have on a daily basis that's really occupying from, at its height, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I mean, you have funeral processions that are coming in, there are 30, 40 cars traveling from the city and up west, ever since the closing of Long Island National Cemetery. That traffic alone during that time is peak. So now if you try to put tractor trailers into the mix and we're going into EPCAL, it's...
But they say what tractor trailers?
I get it.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So we're gonna move on to the next slide, County Road 58. We need to work with Suffolk County Department of Public Works to implement the recommendations that were actually developed in 2003, which called for a widening of the road and taking a property to accommodate that, not just squeezing the roadway within the existing right-of-way, which was done as a quick way of improving the capacity of the roadway, but has generated a lot of problems in terms of safety and getting in and out of the roadway from the side road, from driveways. So that the county plan had featured a full 5-lane section, so there's shoulders on both sides, which would necessitate acquiring property, and a raised median in certain areas, ADA compliant sidewalks on both sides of the roadway, shoulders for bike use, bus turnouts, and shelters.
I think that's gonna be really key to keeping traffic flow moving. I think that's a great idea.
Those were all the things that were left out when the county
Yeah.
did the quick job. The quick job is 20 years old now, right?
Yep. That's gonna be great. Yeah.
And that 2003 recommendation came directly from the corridor study that Suffolk County did for their own roadway. But then there was, whatever happened, there's difference of opinion as to why the quick job got built the way it got built, you know? But it did, in fact, and then the county said, we fixed it, and they went away.
Associated with that, review town site plan requirements, reduce the parking requirements, already been mentioned by Noah, along County Road 58, and the expanse, and you're well aware of that, the expanse of parking that's there now not being utilized, and a very important, cross-access to signals. So you have let's say there's a property that's removed from the corner, there's a corner property that has a driveway onto a town road that might have a traffic signal on County Road 58. The second property can't get to that signal, but they need it to have their vehicles make a left turn. And to get out of there and try to make a left turn is a safety issue. So a lot of people make right turns, travel further down the road, turn into a parking lot on the left side of the road, make a U-turn, come out a different driveway. So wherever, as sites develop, wherever that can be accommodated, the cross-access to get that second property that's not on the corner to the traffic signal to use that is important. Sound Avenue, which has been designated a scenic and historic roadway. So that's research showed in the 1970s that happened. So that is a scenic and historic roadway. So we've heard a lot from the public. We're trying to go forward with recommendations that address public comments on this roadway, in addition to comments we've picked up from other agencies as well. So we want to limit improvements to safety. We want to limit the proposed improvements to safety improvements, basically, and pedestrian and bicycle access. So there's no large-scale traffic capacity improvements, like no additional lanes, we're thinking no additional left turn lanes, even at major driveways, because in conjunction with the special event permit process, where there's a lot of left turns off the roadway into driveways, the applicant who wants to hold that special event should submit an application that includes a traffic management plan to ensure adequate off-street parking, so that there's no vehicles parked on the shoulder of the road for a half a mile, and people walking after they park there. And we should consider an event holder's fee that they would pay to fund the town's police traffic control efforts, which apparently work very well during events.
We have that in place, we call it choke point, and they do pay the police, they set up cones to queue up about 15 cars, so they, let the westbound traffic, stop the westbound, and then they go in. So that, good, thank you for that recommendation.
Okay.
Can we, just before you go too far ahead, just go back to the bicycles. Alternative Transportation Safety Committee has looked at this for a while, and there are designation portions of Sound Avenue that are listed, as for bicycles. It's not safe on Sound Avenue. That's always been my point. There are telephone poles and things right to the edge of the road. It's active farming community where often sometimes you have gravel and things like that just from the farmers working and crossing over. There's no room for a bicycle. It's not safe. When a bicycle is on Sound Avenue, it is in the lane, and we're not proposing to widen to bicycle lanes, but I think that our master plan has to certainly consider the fact that we've got to redesignate or move those bicycle, alternative paths for bicycles from Sound Avenue and to form and designate other routes within the town. I just don't think it's safe. It doesn't work on Sound Avenue. It is too dangerous.
Yeah, we have, as we get to bicycles near the end here, we were thinking that we should, an investigation of a separate shared use path off the roadway, a two-directional pedestrian bicycle path can be investigated along Sound Avenue, because there is available property. I mean, theoretically, if you widen the road, there's not a lot of property you would probably have to buy, so there's available property. The problem is there's parking up against the roadway in certain areas, so you need to, we at least do an investigation of that, but you're right, get the bikes off the shoulder of the roadway, particularly when people are trying to make time. When there's a left turn, car stopped in front of you, you pass to the right, there's a bike in front of you, all of a sudden, also on the side of the road.
It's just when you're measuring the distance, there are trees, telephones, everything is right on the edge. It's not, and I'm not a fan of widening Sound Avenue. I think if you widen it, just more people are gonna come. And so that's what happened out in County Road 39 in Southampton. They widened it and it became a far worse project.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
At the Edwards Avenue intersection, last bullet on that page of roadways, Sound Avenue should be widened at Edwards Avenue to have a separate left turn lane, because there's a left turn arrow there, there's no separate lane. And that probably should be a town project, because we're suggesting you push a lot of this on the state and county, so you need to probably do some project. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to come up with the funding. You can apply for funding on this certain grant applications for that as well. Next slide is a conclusion, I think, of roadways. We talk about other rural, historic, and scenic corridors. We probably should come up with a design criteria for other roads who fit that characteristic, but are not officially designated as historic or scenic corridors, yet they are somewhat rural in nature. And also in communities as well, communities that are have those characteristics as well. So we should come up with a design criteria for rural corridors and communities, focusing on safety improvements to mitigate crashes and enhance pedestrian and bicycle access. In Jamesport, we heard from the civic group there. We have a situation where there's a lot of bypass traffic using Hubbard Avenue and Peconic Bay Boulevard. A study of Route 25 Mill Country Road in downtown Jamesport should be done to develop traffic calming, parking, and pedestrian safety improvements. That's probably something the town should do, at least a study. That's a state road, so funding from the state should be sought to make those improvements once they're determined. Next slide is our transit recommendations. So we're saying that we know downtown's going to develop over the next several years, and it's coming, and it may come relatively quickly. So the
Sorry to interrupt. It seems that the BFJ planning is muted, and we can't hear anything.
Emily, I guess we're having IT issues. We'll deal with it separately because we're getting to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
okay,
we
that
have
sounds good.
very, very lengthy.
Emily, I'll keep you all posted. We had a little bit of trouble today. I don't know if you can hear me, but anyways.
Yeah, I can hear now.
Okay,
Yep.
we're just gonna kind of plow forward.
I only have 4 slides, I think, after this. So this will be
Yeah.
pretty quick.
It said 30 minutes if
Yeah,
people
yeah,
are
yeah.
waiting.
We got it.
Other visitors that are going to be speaking.
Okay, so we're saying we need to be in contact with the MTA and LIRR. As the area develops and the need for rail service and more frequent trains gets bigger, that should be implemented by the railroad. At the MTA First Mile, Last Mile pilot project, the bicycle lane project, has been developed and funded, so that should be developed with the MTA for enhanced access to the station. And additional First Mile, Last Mile projects with the MTA should be sought. Next slide, transit. Work with Suffolk County Transit to evaluate the effectiveness of the new reimagined transit bus route modifications, which are supposed to be implemented this fall. It's getting close. And Suffolk Transit, as the area develops or as things change, they need to make modifications as this goes. It's not a one and done thing. Minor modifications could be made. Someone at the table is going to note that we have an issue because all of the way the routes are now proposed to be implemented soon is to have all of them converge at the railroad station, which probably is not a good idea initially. And that should be probably modified to the county center instead of the railroad station, and then the railroad stations maybe later. There are some minor changes in the routes. There's a Route 80 that replaces the 8A, similar type of operation, and the service is better. The second bullet, we should evaluate the feasibility of a downtown circulator bus with the stops are listed there, potential stops for that, and assess the operation of a shuttle or trolley service in the agritourism areas through a DOT TAP grant, that's Transportation Alternatives Program application. If that can be established for a year or two to see how it works, then maybe that can become a permanent thing, shuttle or trolley service during agritourism seasons. Bikes on the next slide. We need to coordinate with others who are implementing completion of the Empire State Trail, which runs all the way from Buffalo to Manhattan, and a Long Island extension runs to Orient Point. It's on and off-road bike facilities, so we need to coordinate with that because they run through Riverhead. And the town of Southampton just got funding for the Long Island Greenway East extension, which goes from Riverhead to Montauk Point, but it starts here. So we need to coordinate with the town of Southampton on that. I mentioned the shared use path on Sound Avenue already. Develop and institute an e-bike policy for downtown and hamlet centers. In terms of electric vehicles, develop standards for electric vehicle charging stations in terms of their location, ownership, whether it's town or privately owned, and consider preferred access and parking for electric vehicles at municipal locations. Next slide. Pedestrians, to facilitate pedestrian travel and safety throughout the town, similar to the pedestrian crossing improvements. For sidewalks, do the same thing. Get a prioritized list of roadways which should have sidewalks, and then implement as funding becomes available. Implement off that priority list. Apply for New York State TAP grants to help fund sidewalk construction and have more complete streets in the town that also accommodate peds and bicyclists.
I think we can skip the funding sources.
Okay, last slide is just funding sources.
Okay, I have a
Self-explanatory,
few
I think.
questions. Okay. So I just want to go back to page 33, the first and last mile access mobility. I think it's something that's critical, especially for the train station area. And I know that you have been working on that, and I've been part of that. We just recently got, actually a couple of days ago, we got contacted from the state. I have to send that email to you, where they want to work with us. So I think, Noah, that initial phone call, you should be part of that?
Yeah, and of course LKMA.
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure that that takes off.
Implementation of the pilot program that we went
So
through?
I got an email, and I don't know if it's the same one, but they were asking what we were doing to implement, and I just responded and gave them the lowdown, but basically it's all dependent on funding, some of which we do have already.
Right, but I think
And
this
some of
was
which
an
we're applying for.
an email to introduce a new person that's assigned to Riverhead.
Okay,
So
great.
to take it into the
Okay,
next
awesome.
step. So
Great.
that's all be part of that. And at our last town board meeting, Councilman Hubbard wanted to discuss a moratorium on Calverton Industrial, on building, and the the battery energy storage system. Have you been in touch with them on that? Because I think
We haven't
that's-
been in touch about the moratorium. We've heard about it. I don't know any.
Yeah, but I think that's critical because we're at the state, and that's gonna be the next two discussions. He asked for it to be put up, and I put it up, but I think that as you work with this, because the moratorium is gonna outline the future possibly.
Right.
I mean, we have samples here. It's gonna outline the future of what it should look like.
Right.
And I think somewhere, and I just wanna make that connection between
Absolutely. Well,
both of you.
I'll stay on to hear the presentation. It sounds like the battery energy storage has more to do with kind of state regulations and what their guidance is, but for the industrial, we certainly, what we're proposing, I want to make sure it's in line with what you support, of course, and.
Because this would be our code being changed.
Right.
And so I think that we have to be, and you will, I just want to
Right,
make
and
sure
it's
that
a
that
matter of
connection.
process, essentially, if this goes into the plan, then the code still has to be changed.
Right.
We would want to work with.
Well, we're trying to change it now through a moratorium, because there's exceptions and there's all kind.
Well,
I just make the connection,
Got
that's
it.
it. I don't
Okay.
think we have to get
Got
that
it, got it,
further
got it,
into
got
it. I just want to mention that, there are people here in the audience. I know Joanne Wansky was here, and we have Patrick Fedun from Fedun Realty, and we have Carpenter here from the farm, and I want to thank you guys. I know that this is a lot of work. You've been doing great. It's voluntary, and we can't forget that, this work is very critical, and this is going to help us create our roadmap for the next 20 years. And I had one more thing that okay, no, I'm good. I'm good now. I know this is an introduction. This is nowhere where, this is not going to be the final product, and I know there's still a lot of work to do. I look forward to the meetings that you're going to hold.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions? Move on?
Thanks for your time. The next,
All right.
so the next thing we'll do is we'll give you a draft scope of for the scoping document for seeker. So that'll be kind of the next thing, and we'll get that to you the next couple of weeks.
And the other statement I want to just remember, I want to commend you on weaving TDRs throughout this whole thing. I just saw it. You weaved it into all different areas. That should be commendable. This is a long, long time coming for our farmers, and I see how you did it. It was crafted beautifully, and I thank you for that.
Great.
The only thing I'm just gonna add, I was up in Connecticut, and one of the things I noticed on the stop signs, like on the post, they put reflective material, right? I believe we need that here. There are several locations where we absolutely need that, for safety, because there's a lot of unlit streets, and they just light up when your car hits them, that's it.
It's really cheap too.
Yeah, it is, but that should go to the
Just tell
traffic
the highway
safety
department to
also.
do it.
We have them on the
just
crosswalk
order-
signs
you can just
downtown
order them.
on DOT.
I know that,
Yeah.
you make the recommendation, so they'll take it out of there.
Right, you can also go with larger signs too, larger stop signs
They're ugly,
than normal too.
Thanks.
So gentlemen, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Great start.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See you soon.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Do they want stuff? Well, you gotta do this.
Do, but we'll talk because, because I'm,
Because I'm looking at it for Pat Rock too, because they wanna do the same thing
Yeah,
in Pat
for
Rock.
30 minutes.
so there's so much to
You
talk
saw
about, so
something.
we'll reconvene.
Let's go to the next thing.
Yes, we are waiting for them to clear up because people might have to come in. Well, actually not.
No, they're gonna stay.
Yeah.
We're not going for it.
They're not going.
Okay, we're gonna move on. So now you're becoming the police captain. Okay, our next discussion relates to a possible 6-month moratorium on industrial development in Calverton, industrials A, B, and C. Councilman Hubbard, I'm gonna turn it over to you, and and to our CDA Director, Dawn Thomas, to introduce the topic to us.
Okay. We've been listening to the community, obviously. We know a lot of industrial development and industrial land in the Calverton area is being sought after, and there's several large projects that have shown interest. And I had requested previously support from the board to do a moratorium to slow things down until we get the comprehensive plan done, until we have a good thorough look through the comprehensive plan and be able to realize what should and what shouldn't be done in the Calverton area. So with Dawn and Matt from planning, we put our heads together and came up with some ideas. There's a lot of potential uses up there, a lot of square feet that's available. And there's about 12 million square feet of industrial space that's available. And I, for one, don't want to see 12 million square feet of industrial space used or developed in that area. think it's prudent to put a 6-month moratorium out and let the comprehensive plan, as we just heard from them today, they're moving along nicely, and this will just pump the brakes for us to be able to take a look. And I mentioned it earlier about smart growth. Some of these projects are going to have to come to fruition, and they're going to have to come to fruition simply to allow us to preserve more land at the end game by using TDRs and having some of these projects coming in. Having said that, I'm not advocating for a major logistics center or anything like that, but we know we can't stop any and everything that is trying to come in the area, and that's part of the smart growth. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dawn and Matt, and we can go through this and explain it a little more thoroughly.
So, I think the point in time where we really kind of focused on the thought that we might really need to look at this again is when we started doing the TDR conversions and really kind of expanding the use of TDR. I know we mentioned earlier, and this was kind of a perfect segue to this idea because we have 7,000 acres of farmland we still need to preserve. Somebody has to pay for that. If the taxpayers of the town of Riverhead come out of pocket for that, it's about $450 million in today's value. That really would be a hardship for our residents. So the better way to do it is really to do those commercial transitions where we increase the TDR opportunity in commercial development, and that will allow us to do smart growth, as Councilman mentioned, to shift that development from the open space areas that everyone really kind of universally agrees we need to preserve and move it into those commercial spaces. And the conclusion of or the sort of current spot where we are is we have pressure for industrial development. We have a potential code that we're talking about, which we're tweaking. It's not ready to go yet. The comp plan's not completed. And so the idea would be to reduce FAR and to a lower level than what it currently is, allow some increase in the FAR, not to where it currently is allowed, but to bring the TDR in. And so if we allow development to go forward that's currently proposed without, while those things are pending, we lose opportunity, and that's really where moratoriums become appropriate. And so there are very limited circumstances where they are appropriate. And I'm generally not a fan of moratoriums. However, in this particular instance, I feel like the need to allow us to really use TDRs to our advantage to take the burden off of the residential taxpayers is important. And so that's why we're recommending it, and I'll let Matt talk about the specifics of the draft.
Absolutely. Yeah, so what Councilman Hubbard said is correct, and I would even clarify it a little bit differently than pumping the brakes. It's more, you're taking your foot off the accelerator. We have identified that we have a goal in mind for the development of Calverton that we're trying to achieve, as Dawn said, through the comprehensive plan. The current zoning regime doesn't really jive with that goal, so there needs to be adjustments, and this temporary sort of pause or slowdown would be able to achieve that. So if you see in the second paragraph of the draft towards the end, this is largely in groundwater management zone 3, which allows you 300 gallons per day of sanitary flow. So a build out in this area for health department standards would allow you to have about 7,500 square feet. The way the zoning is now, the as of right build out is 17,424 square feet. So as you can see, they're vastly different. You know, Dawn correctly pointed out this is an option so we can make sure TDRs are implemented correctly. This is a DEC, environmental justice area. So it's very, very a sensitive area. We did have some exclusions for certain projects that are, a little bit further down the road or, are less environmentally impacted, that wouldn't be impacted by this moratorium. But this is, the best way to clarify it is we're taking our foot off the accelerator because we know we have a goal. We can see the finish line. We know what we want to achieve. We just want to make sure that's done correctly, because at the same time, current zoning allows very intense development in this area. So there's no real way at this time to say, please wait, we want you to not do that because we have a different idea. No, developers are going to say, we want to develop under the current, zoning regime. So I think we need to make sure our goals are achieved.
Okay, so I have a few few statements on this. A moratorium is the most invasive form of limiting people's property rights. It's a governmental act, and we have a moratorium already there on solar, and now we're gonna start talking about a moratorium on industrial. So there's some people that couldn't do solar now went to industrial. I wonder what's gonna happen next. So that's something to, to keep in the back of your mind. Moratoriums should not be used as an avenue to bypass our own planning board. We have a planning board, we have zoning, we have a zoning officer, we also have a code officer, and moratoriums are not looked preferably according to the Suffolk County Planning Commission, because they know it's very invasive, and if you have a system in place, they would prefer, and I know this because I have consulted with them on this matter, that they would have preferred, and we have two systems. We have a zoning officer, a code, and then obviously we have the planning board. And I think that's the responsibility of the, of the planning board, and, having the discussion, why aren't we utilizing the planning board? Why are not we utilizing, coming up with the zoning ourselves? And we're gonna say, stop. And then when you say that stop, you have to be careful, because there's Article 78 out there, and we decide to change zoning from solar, the people going to industrial, now we're stopping industrial. We're opening ourselves, we're becoming very ripe to lose a lawsuit and possibly still get billed, and we might not even have control on what we build. So I'm just giving you, the other side of it. I know that the planning board, Ed Dezensky, one day decided I'm gonna do a resolution, and the planning, give it to the town, I'm gonna tell them a moratorium. And then, you know what, it could not happen at that time. Regardless of where we go, and I'll let the board members speak after I'm almost done, is that this has to go before the Suffolk County Planning.
Absolutely, it's required.
Yeah, it is required, but I don't think the solar moratorium went through it. 'Cause I called, and so I just wanna make sure that gets taken care of. I don't want us to, to put us in that predicament long-term and hurt the town. And, just, guys have to work it out. I know that Tim is for it, but we have to be a little bit careful. We already know that the comprehensive plan is being, it is addressing this. Everything that you're trying to address on the moratorium is being, addressed. And that's why I was saying, make that connection to make sure we're all on, on the same page.
And until those regs can be adopted, we feel like we're vulnerable to
And you have to consider the
to
projects.
losing opportunity to really update the plan the way we need to.
Right, and you
based
have to
on
consider
the-
how far and identify those projects. If this
Yes.
goes forward and the board votes on it, identify the projects that are, that have foreign to. I know there was a discrepancy with my understanding of what's considered your vested. It's not what I was told 6 months ago when this topic came back. It's, you accept it, you cash a check, the people are completing site plans, they're spending thousands of dollars on architectural design, they're coming here, they're paying attorneys. That's considered a little bit vested, but I'll let the board add whatever they want to add to that.
Madam Supervisor, I respectfully disagree with just about everything you just said. You said we have a planning board. Well, the planning board recommended that we do the moratorium. So we are using the planning board, and we're using their wisdom and their direction. This is a moratorium that, for the fact of the single reason alone that we have a comprehensive plan ongoing is a great reason to instill the moratorium. But more so, in being able to use TDRs and preserve property, to help us do that, we need to have this moratorium. And, everybody's painting a picture of it's a negative thing, a moratorium. It's not. It's a smart thing. It's a smart thing for us to take our foot off the accelerator and pump the brake a little bit, and let the comprehensive plan give us guidance, and then we can march on from there. And to me, it's just complete common sense. we don't want to change things, I don't want to change code by resolution when we have a comprehensive plan going on. I think we get the recommendations from the comprehensive plan, and then we look at everything as a whole, and we implement what we decide to implement, and if there's something we don't like, we don't implement it. But to me, this is just slowing things down a little bit, because there's a lot of movement looking to go into the Calverton area. And to me, this is just common sense, and I agree, the one thing I agree with you about is the property owner's rights to be able to do. And we're not saying they can't do it, we're saying they're gonna take a halt about what they can do until we can get all our ducks in a row and decide what we wanna have happen there. And that's how I'm approaching this, and that's how I think is the most logical way to explain it, and to me, it makes all the sense in the world.
Okay, so, anyone want to add to that?
So, a couple questions. I mean, I'm not a fan of moratoriums, but I like the aspect of doing everything we possibly can to save agricultural farming preservation by means of TDR. And that's why I would consider this approach. Simple questions during the process.
Yep.
I'd want it to be as brief as we can. So when we just put out the term 6 months, my question to you is why 6 months? I would want to see a more affirmative time frame. Can we do this in 4 months or 3 months? It'd be better.
So,
What happens to, I'll let you answer
sure,
it first.
in
We'll go to
the
next.
scope of 6 months, I think it allows us to at least get towards a draft comprehensive plan and then start building those draft code amendments. I don't think that's gonna happen prior to 6 months, so I think
But
that's the
it
most
is
appropriate
lengthy,
timeline,
And the secra that's running parallel,
Yeah.
that creates the generic environmental impact statement that will support the zoning from a secret point of view, will track parallel with that. It'll be done around the same time we adopt be done at the same time or right before we adopt the plan, because we need to do that. And that will support the zone change. So what I think we should do to keep it as short as possible, because I agree it needs to be as short as possible, is to prioritize the modifications to the industrial zoning as soon as the plan's done. That should be our first step. And that way, the minute we're done, the minute we have this, we could even probably do it simultaneously. When we adopt the comp plan, have a resolution to schedule the public hearing to change the zone to what the board wants it to be, consistent with the comp plan, and then so we will try to make it as short as
It's
possible.
all ending in the same place.
I would be looking for, in order for me to support this, a very definitive timeframe of where we're really gonna be, not just.
Yes.
I mean, I'll bring up our solar moratorium.
Correct.
I don't think anything's being done on it, and I'm not gonna renew it again anymore, because no work is being done or created on it. So I'm not looking to just freeze things without getting the work done and coming
When is
back
that
with
due?
an answer, a solution on why we did the moratorium and what we gained during the process.
Right.
This I do feel, Councilman Hubbard's putting forward, I think is a great effort to protect farming and give them the opportunity for the TDR rights, and I do believe in that. But what happens to current projects that are currently performing secret? The secret freeze, or can they continue movement in their secret program?
So I can kind of go through, so it's in 303-4 of the draft. So we do have certain things that are excluded from the article. So any action that's a type 2, so that doesn't require an environmental review, that would be excluded from the moratorium. Any alterations to cell towers, new equipment swaps, that's excluded. Importantly, site plan applications that have received final approval by the approving governing body, so this board or the planning board, if they've got site plan approval, they're excluded from the moratorium. Lot line modifications, and then applications where a positive finding statement has been issued pursuant to SECRA by the governing body. So if they've gone through a lengthy SECRA process, they've gotten a positive finding statement, which means
Or if they're in the middle of that process?
in the middle of it, no, they would not be excluded.
That's most of our projects.
It's some of them, yes.
No, it is most of our projects. I think there's only one that I know that has site approval.
What about those, so when it's the industrial moratorium, if I'm a landowner and I want to build and I want to just conform to the current town board, so if it's a 30-foot limit and I'm going to build something 30-foot limit, are you telling me that I have to wait right now, or if I'm not asking for any type of variances, can I continue to push forward?
So under the Gaza moratorium or without it, is your question?
Would you say that again?
So under the moratorium, if
Yeah.
you could not develop, like you.
So even if I wanna stay,
Correct.
Because the FAR is the issue. The
Yes.
FAR is too big right now.
Based
And
on
so,
infrastructure, sanitary flow, we don't have sewers in the area. There's a lot of things, just road infrastructure that, you know,
so we talked prior to this, Noah's saying BFJ's looking at from going to 30 to 40.
Correct.
What are you looking, is that the same parameters?
yeah,
or
this is
you-
where, this is,
You know, I hear residents coming forward and going, it's 50 feet. it's
this is in
40."
converse with the comprehensive plan.
Yeah,
I think
we're-
that's the most important thing to know. It's not one effort happening over here and the comp plan happening over here. This is at the same time with the same goal, so we can do it correctly. So it's kind of like a bottleneck, everything's approaching and we're trying to get to the same finish line. This allows us to do that.
we don't want to adopt a code and then
Say,
lose all the opportunity we have to make sure that it's done the way we are all now agreeing it should be done.
Yeah,
So with that, with the projects that are currently in the queue,
correct.
all right, that have X FAR. So, and you want to, in the comprehensive plan, we want to shrink it back to 0.25, which I totally agree with.
Yep.
Which they're right. They've designed their project based on the current FAR, right? So the moratorium happens. TDRs and the height, to me, have nothing to do with the moratorium, because we're gonna pass the TDRs anyway, right? And you're gonna have to get the, buy the increased height. So the moratorium really doesn't affect that. It affects more the FAR. So what happens to those projects that are in the queue now
They'd
with
have
the
to,
FAR?
they'd have to comply with whatever the modified zoning is that's adopted by the town
And what do you
board.
think's gonna happen? What are they gonna do? I mean,
A moratorium is a legal basis to
No, I'm
achieve
not
these
asking
goals,
if
yeah.
it's legal
I'm not
or
gonna
not.
speculate on what's gonna happen, I don't know what's gonna happen.
If a
So
developer wanted.
this is what I'm
Yeah.
gonna suggest, and I've spoken to Dawn about this morning, and I think you're aware of this. Greg Berkman brought this up probably 8 months ago.
Yeah.
When he did the research on the 2003 comp plan, which had a .25 FAR.
The recommendation,
And-
correct.
The recommendation.
Yes.
And the recommendation was not adopted, yeah,
Correct. And so it was changed,
correct.
right? It went higher,
.4,
.4.
which is
And when
very
he
high.
showed that to me, and then he said there's no supporting documentation, and that was concerning to him, and he brought it to me. And I totally agreed with him that we should go back to the way it was in 2003. To that end, I know I've asked for a resolution to go in for next week to change that now. There's no reason to wait for the comp plan to be,
I guess we-
and I think Noah would agree. The comp plan doesn't prevent us from implementing some zoning now.
Does it?
It's already making that recommendation in here.
You could do that,
Yeah.
but I still recommend you do the moratorium, because anybody who wants to, you're gonna lose the opportunity for people to use TDRs in the interval. So if somebody
Correct.
came in and wanted to do .25, I guess just as of right, and didn't want TDRs, that would be fine.
It's
But
about missed opportunities as
it's-
much as it is about.
Yeah,
Well,
it's-
I think I have it, and somebody has a flip-flop, because if I'm giving them less, and they want more, they gotta buy TDRs, is my point.
Correct.
And I wanna put that in place now,
Well,
is
you
my point.
can't put the TDRs in place
without
now,
doing a
because we
GIS.
don't have the
You can't-
secra.
Moratorium and not, when the TDR has its own life, right, to where we adopt that, what's the two lives have to do with each other? I wanna get the
Well, I think
the
what-
zoning, the FAR correct now, the TDRs come later, and the moratorium or not, correct?
I would say that, especially in the industrial zones, we look at it as a TDR sink, as we're trying to adopt these codes so we have a good area to land them. That doesn't exist right now.
Okay, I think they're two different items. I'm gonna move forward with
Yeah,
my
that's fine.
resolution to reduce the FAR, and
Yeah.
that's where I'm at.
So I think go ahead, Supervisor.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanna, something's not right here, because we're using the TDRs, which we highly need. And we're working on it, and we needed to be working on this many years ago. And we're using that to say, well, that's the cause of stopping progress in industrial A, B, and C. So how about use the TDRs on Route 58, downtown, and other areas. Well, how are we using that? Well, the only reason we're doing this moratorium is because we need to preserve land, but you could still do that with everything else that's happening in the other zones.
Well, we haven't implemented that yet, though. That's just a recommendation currently. So when the comp plan is adopted, then we'll implement those TDRs. But I think just in the case of, just as an example, it's about the pressure that's on right now, because like downtown, we can change those TDRs and make that a sink, but there's no threat because we have the 500 unit cap.
Yeah.
There's other areas where there's limitations. We don't have the zoning in place to allow residential and put TDRs into that. But here, the use is already permitted at the .4, and they're forging ahead.
Correct.
And you lose that sink for TDRs, and those could be big numbers.
The one thing I think that is with projects that may be proposed or have been proposed is that we stop at 30 feet for the industrial development. We do not control the ZBA. So if they go and they sit before the ZBA now under our current town code, and they ask to go from 30 to 40, the ZBA may or may not grant it. If the ZBA grants it, good for the developer, but then there was never an opportunity to assist the farming community with TDRs. So this is right now the main aspect of which I'm seeing of this proposal is that if you pause for a moment, are you giving, two things could happen. One, you protect the farmer and you put the TDRs in place so that if the developer wants to go from 30 to 40 feet, he gets to purchase the TDRs from the farmer. And also, he's more apt to get that height that he wants. He may go to the ZBA, or him or her, and say, I'd like to go higher, and the ZBA go, no. Well, 30 feet, nothing ever changes, and that's it. But if they grant yes, we've granted a higher development with no potential to assist our farming community with TDR rights. So the question is how many things are in the hopper now? What major projects? What can this affect? If I was sitting as a developer, I would be curious, do I want to take the pause? Because do I want the guarantee to go from 30 to 40, and I'm willing to purchase those rights because I could probably run a more profitable business at a higher height development, and at the same time benefits the farmers. That's that's the part that I'm looking at, going, all right, I'm intrigued by the idea of bringing the farming community to the table right now through TDRs.
And even changing the setback requirements, that's something we're working with NOAA, and it will be recommended most likely that those setbacks, because when the setbacks are further from the road, the property looks less intrusive, and also design standards so that buildings in certain areas are looking more like they fit in the community rather than Planet Zero. So we really are looking at a bunch of different things that we lose a shot at doing, and once the project is built, it's there. And we can't back it out.
There's no second bite at the apple.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, you could reduce the FAR now, you could do that, but I'd still suggest you do the moratorium, because you'll ultimately get those other things that we're suggesting will be really important, because the commercial development, as Councilman Hubbard mentioned, and I know you all know, is very important to the tax base. I think Bob's done some calculations on what the commercial tax base means overall, because every time the budget increases for whatever reason, inflation or anything, that's shared by the taxpayers. The commercial development gives the taxpayers relief, and it's currently already providing that. The more commercial development, the more tax relief, and the better opportunity we have to preserve farmland, which is really, as I said earlier, I think a universal goal. I haven't heard anybody say we shouldn't do that. And keep the bucolic views. I mean, all the surveys we got from the comp plan are consistent, keep the open space and all those things. So the best way to do that, because if we do nothing about it, we make a decision, by virtue of doing nothing, you're making a decision that farmland, that 7,000 acres will be developed, and it could be, 2,500 new homes. And I think that's the direction that the board has kind of said they don't want to go in. So we've worked really hard with BFJ to make sure that there's as many sinks for TDRs as possible. We really want to get that program successful, because otherwise the taxpayers have to pay for it, or we get a result that we don't want, which is that farmland is lost, and it's very expensive to buy, so.
So I have
No, what?
I have a question, if I could. So I know assisted living is in here, and I'm totally in support of the TDR, so we need to put a moratorium on that because somebody's looking to do a project, right? Otherwise, we're not gonna get the TDRs on Middle Road. I mean, and that's one. Two, there's people talking about doing condos on Main Street. That's part of the TDR program. We need to put a moratorium on that as well.
But you don't, because you have a cap.
Yes,
There's no pressure, there's no zoning that allows it. Right now, your warehouse
I know,
zoning
on
allows
the
it.
condos, I get it, okay, but there are
There's
people
no
talking
threat.
about, okay, I got it.
Noah, from your experience, how long does it take to, once we have a draft of the comp plan? Because we're looking out, it's not gonna be resolved in 6 months. That's a fact.
What's not gonna be resolved?
The comp plan.
The comp plan, we have it in our timeline as, April, I think we'll have the draft and a lot of the final aspects will be kind of going through.
No, you have to come up to the microphone, sorry. A microphone, please, so lacking.
Oh, yeah, it's getting lazy.
I'm gonna have to leave, I'm gonna have to leave soon.
The question was when, when the plan will be done. I think we have it basically the end of March, start of April, but a lot will be determined, by then. We'll just be kind of going through revisions in the secret process, public hearings and so
Yeah,
on, for 6 times.
Before we can act on
Right.
that plan.
So I would say
It has to go
pub-
through public hearing.
Roughly April 1st, give or take. But I
We
think.
have to adopt, we have to change code.
Right, so that's the adoption of the plan. And then the code amendments, we would have to coordinate that. So as part of the secret process, we would want to make sure that we put in sufficient information so that basically you could just borrow that language from our GEIS for the zoning. So, the fact that we know it now is helpful. If you wanted to do it at the same time, that could be done. We would have to know that right now, which
Yes,
we kind of
would you-
do.
Yes, I think
And
it's
then we would probably want to have the scoping document be for the plan and the code amendments to the industrial area.
Yeah, they should be done simultaneously so we can move this on, because if we have to go through the entire process,
Right.
and by the time all the adoptions and everything happens, look how long it took us to adopt the plan book. Well over a year and a half. So if we can get that, you're talking about 6 months,
Right.
and there were people waiting, not knowing what to do with their land.
Right. I
I'm
would
a
just,
real estate agent, so
Right,
I
no.
look at stuff as property owners, land people, we stopped the solar, then went to industrial.
Right.
Now we want to preserve farmland, so we're using where people want to build, and people are confused, so
Right. No,
we're
I
trying
understand
to, we also have to ensure that we protect that segment of our community.
The one thing that we would just need to work out with Dawn's department is, so we would do the EIS and write all the code. But the specific writing of the code, I think, is not something that we kind of provided for, so I'm not sure if that would be done by your department or what.
It would be done by us,
We
by
can
our
handle
zoning,
that,
yeah.
yeah.
But nothing can be done, and you have a moratorium, so you're probably in all likelihood going to have to issue a extended moratorium.
I don't think
I don't
so,
think so.
because once we get that close, there's nobody that's gonna come in and finish a project before we get the zoning adopted.
Correct.
Right now, we're in a kind of there's some projects
Yeah, I can
perking
outline some of
along.
the scale,
Okay.
it's cited in the draft. So we have a 641,000 square foot logistic building, an industrial subdivision of a 130 acre parcel, so that allows about 1.5 million square foot of build out. Some self-storage for 152,000 square feet, and another expansion of an industrial property for a 75,000.
How many acres are you talking about? You keep talking about square feet. How many acres are you talking about?
I don't know if I have the exact acreage of the whole area. I can figure it out.
I mean roughly, you don't have to be exact.
It's hard to say.
Is it 200, 300, 400?
It's anything that's within the zone in Calverton. So
Yeah, we
I'd want to give you an exact number, Bob. I don't want to just spitball something crazy.
I mean, because I also look at the fact that you put the solar moratorium, which I'm trying to get support to get rid of it, right? And I think about and I'm not gonna mention, but I know you know that there was one project that went to our house that could have potentially been sold, right? So that's the risk that we take in all this, and I have no idea over the last year how many people might have done solar, and now we're going, oh, well, let's get rid of solar, no traffic impacts, blah, 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 right? Community benefit money, tax money we would have been receiving, on the commercial tax side, everything that we want. So,
It's a harsh decision to make, there's no
Yeah.
question.
No, it's not
an easy
We
one.
don't recommend it lightly. I think,
No.
though, that the
I'm not
solar
saying- I'm not
moratorium is
making a
going
comment
to
on this, I'm
expire
just,
next month, I think, on its own terms.
Okay,
And
I
so-
think, to be fair, we need a list of all the projects that this may be affected,
Yeah.
and we need to let these people know.
But it's gonna go to a public hearing.
Well,
Yeah,
It's
it
going
would-
to a public
if
hearing,
it
but
goes to a
people
public
have
hearing.
applications, there's probably still spending money as we speak, getting architects, speaking to attorneys. I know I have to go through it, we're very familiar with that, but I think that if, it's in our interest for good governance, that we let these people, that there is a consideration. We don't know where it's gonna go, if it's gonna get voted in, but I think we owe it to the property owners, that we may be, going down that route.
I guarantee you there's not one of them that doesn't know about it already.
Okay.
That's
Well,
I'm just gonna
we're
lend
just
to
making
that.
sure that.
As a farmer, I was on an industrial piece right next to Splish Splash, and they had hoped for some development there, and then, of course, the talks of this came up, and this is where I personally come into difficult area when it comes to voting on things, but they found out that the moratorium was coming up, and they had approached us to rent it again from them, because if there's gonna be a moratorium, they're not gonna be able to build it out. They don't wanna pay for their commercial taxes, they have to have a farmer rent it from them. So there's a lot of implication here. I am all about preserving farmland. I have devoted my life to it.
Yes.
But I'd really like to know the details before we really pull the trigger on this.
For sure. We'll get to that.
Okay. All right, thank you. And next discussion, it's relating to a possible 6-month moratorium on Tier 2 battery energy storage system, BESS, and that's going to be with, again, Tim Hubbard, and again, Dawn Thomas, so you're not really going anywhere, and I think, Charlie, you're probably staying by. And again, in the last town board meeting, Tim Hubbard had made a recommendation to complete a moratorium, and Noah, I'm very happy that you're here, because I know at one point, we had found funds for $10,000, so you can address this, and it's just a few months ago, we had the fire representative here, we had the state here telling us how safe it was, and we all voted on the moratorium. So something must have gone wrong, so,
Why did we didn't vote on the moratorium?
You voted on the.
no, excuse me,
the
we
code.
voted for the BESS,
Yes,
it wasn't
yes.
moratorium, like,
Yeah.
whereas we voted a resolution to accept it here in the town, and now a few months later, we're back to, we need to have a stop, so let's have a healthy conversation, find out what happened here and what the thinking is, so.
Well, this is a no-brainer. This was something, this is relatively new area with the battery energy storage systems. And recently, as everybody's aware, there were 2 fires upstate, and there was a fire out in East Hampton at battery energy storage systems. What we don't know fully yet is what caused those fires. So in light of that, New York State, who basically through NYSERDA has put together the rules and regs for this that we basically adopted, has said, hang on, guys, we gotta investigate this. You know, we thought these were safer than they are, or maybe they are as safe as they say they are, but what happened to these units? And they put together an interagency fire safety working group. And what I'm requesting with this moratorium is just to be put out there until we have the findings from that interagency fire safety report. And from what I've been told, they may be done even as soon as late October, early November with their findings. and this is calling for a 6-month moratorium. I would say, I would rather have it worded just to go as long as, until the findings come out about the,
I think legally we need to specify a timeframe.
You did,
It has to
you
be a
have to
timeframe.
give it a time, because people are in limbo.
It can't just be
But I
open-ended.
think
Yeah.
you can certainly lift it if
we
something
can lift it,
happens.
yes, we can
before,
lift it if the
sooner.
findings come out and we,
Yes.
what we think they're gonna release. It isn't, there were other factors that were involved. One fire, I'm being told, was electrical, one was because of flooding. You know, these are things that can be addressed, but we need to know, we need to hear from that. Our own Board of Fire Commissioners wrote a letter asking us to support a moratorium on this, and I completely agree with them. And to me, it's just a no-brainer. Let's find out more about this before we surge forward.
Yeah, that's a pretty excellent summary. That's the real concern. I mean, we went into this with our eyes open. It's one of the first heavy code changes that I started working on in this town in 2022. And Councilman Rothwell has been working on bringing BESS, into the code a year prior to that. So I think everyone knew what we wanted to achieve and support green energy. Subsequent to our adoption of this code, there were some issues. So that's the concern here. We don't know, A, how these fires started, why they started, is it something in the manufacturing, or the right fire safety measures being implemented. This allows us to say, hey, we have concerns. I mean, it's a public safety issue here. That's the way I look at it, so.
I think we also have to explore, are these older, initial, first generation storage units?
So the
Because-
one in East Hampton is not brand new. I believe the ones upstate are fairly new, but this is a statewide issue. So clearly, I mean, if it's not just, if there was one fire in the area and we knew what the cause was, I'd be less concerned. But clearly, there's something that's not functioning correctly. So
Okay.
I think to err on the side of caution is to allow experts to really figure out what the root cause of this issue is a smart thing to do.
But the reality is the time frame for a project to get approved is about 3 years.
Correct.
In its best possible time frame, potentially maybe 5 years to actually get a project up and going. To say that we're going to send a message to now that we're going to have a moratorium and we're going to prevent that, Governor Hochul's commission is not going to take 3 years to determine their findings. So to pause something now I think is unnecessary because we're 3 years out. When they come back in, whether it be 3 months, they come to their decision, a few months, then we implement that. The state hasn't determined what their decision is going to be on the advisory committee that they put together. They may require even current existing projects that are operating to update their fire
Yes.
systems. Could be one potential aspect they can do. Whatever they implement will require that the current projects that are being assessed prior to a CO meet that criteria.
I guess the concern is that, A, we don't know what the recommendation is going to be. It's a big unknown. They could be all of those things that you've listed. They could be more, it could be less. The concern is that if we have existing projects, they're marching towards vesting, and the closer they get to the finish line, the more case that they have that they're vested within the existing standards.
Do we have any projects in the
We
pipeline?
we do
How
have
many?
projects in the pipeline,
One,
correct.
and it just came in, I understand.
Yeah, within.
So it's gonna take 3 years to complete that
I
project,
don't
and we're
think it-
creating
no.
a moratorium.
But if
No.
the governor's
Approved.
commission says, oh, the setbacks really need to be
Be
X,
X.
and we let them be Y, that's something would be hard to fix, I think.
Correct. I don't know how you fix
after
it
it's
after the
built.
fact, after it's built, after it's.
If
understand
the
that, but-
Department
but
of
if our-
Energy states, I'm sorry, if the Department of Energy states that these kinds of systems or this kind of battery is not safe for the environment, doesn't matter if somebody has a project in identifying that, they had to change it.
They may even make current operating existing facilities go back and update
I
them.
would say
Exactly.
it's a possibility, but you'd be hard pressed to make someone make wholesale changes to their setbacks, to their, the density of whatever the project is, the amount of energy. Once it's in and constructed, I think it's hard to change.
Now, I know that we had the board there was a recommendation for the fire department. However, their primary concern was lack of training. It wasn't,
Training, I summarized it in the fourth paragraph
it
of the
wasn't,
draft.
to do a moratorium. They also, and they should know. And maybe we have to work on that end.
Yeah.
But
And-
there is training available through
There
Suffolk
is
County
training.
Fire Academy. Mr. Rogers has offered to give training. There have been programs that have been presented and offer it to River Farm, we're still 3 years out. We've
Well-
got time to put the training in place. And we're gonna let the particular developer that proposes the project pay for that specific
When you
training.
say
Or make
three-
sure that it's offered.
When you say 3 years, is that 3 years from when they're proposing the project to the
Time
utility?
to get, time.
Yeah,
time
it's
to
not a
get-
time frame. So I would say the period that you're referring to is probably significantly less, considering they already submitted a site plan, because that means they have funding for the project, that largely means the utility approves of it. So I think that 3-year period is even shorter than you think for an existing application.
All right, so let me put this in perspective. So right now, we have a solar moratorium in place. When that didn't happen, people decided to go to industrial. We're doing a comprehensive plan, and now we're gonna say moratorium on industrial until the comprehensive plan. You always need an excuse, so it's not like we created it. Why? You have to have a reason. So you find a reason why you're gonna do that. And then right after that, we're gonna have battery energy storage moratorium. We do not need to be known as the land of moratoriums.
No, we need to be known as the land that cares for its people and its properties.
And we all do,
No,
and
we're
we
not.
do care.
No, we're not.
Yes, we do.
We're carelessly going forward.
Everything
and
with
that's
a-
what the moratorium's
Everything with a
about.
balance, it's good, but again, the planning board, as was stated earlier, has said that the town board should create a moratorium, was at the solar project. The planning board should be looking at these, planning, see the word, planning, future, now and the future. So in most planning boards, they're the ones that decide that this is appropriate. And so,
The town board is the legislative body, and they adopt codes and they regulate land use through the zoning code. I would say a lot of the responsibility lies with this board.
But you could refer it to the planning.
You could
we-
refer
that's
to their.
exactly where I was going. They
You would
could say,
refer
would
to-
you look
yeah.
at this for us?
Absolutely, and I think that would be appropriate as we went through this, to
Okay,
refer it to the
so
planning
I'm
board.
gonna make that ask the planning board and work together, the town board and the
Yeah.
planning board.
Planning board already made a recommendation for a moratorium on the
Correct.
industrial.
But they
Yes,
didn't
that
review
one.
it, they didn't look at the legal aspect, they just said, moratorium, give it to them. Here's the football, you take it, $200,
Well, then why would you want to ask them to participate anyway, if
Well, they
what
should-
they say is useless?
Well, they
according to
should
you?
look at the law, they should meet with our planning department, talk to Suffolk County, see.
Well,
you
that
know,
would be that would be through the
Part of-
process.
Part
through-
of the process.
If the board on either one of these proposals decided to bring it to a public hearing, at that point, it would have to be referred to the planning commission, and they weigh in to say, is this legal, is this not, or recommend changes. So it's not right to do that yet, until we know if it's gonna move forward. So if there's no support, we wouldn't refer it to the planning commission, because it's not appropriate.
My fellow board members, are you afraid that battery energy storage systems are gonna pack up and go away and never come back here again? Are you afraid that these warehouses will never, ever come to town because we put a 6-month moratorium on it? I got news for you. That's not gonna happen. These people are making so much money off of these developments. They're not going away. 6 months isn't gonna scare them. It's not gonna happen. But realistically, we need to look out for the best interest of what we want as a whole with the town through the use of the comprehensive plan. And that's the same exact reason solar was put for a moratorium, to be addressed through the comprehensive plan. It's not that nothing was done, it's that it was put on hold until we could get through the comprehensive plan. This is guiding us for the next 20 years. This is so important for us to get right. If we do not get it right now, we're just opening up a road full of mistakes coming at us down in the future. And to me, to wait 6 months, I don't understand why everybody's hesitant about that. These people are not going away. They're gonna be here 6 months from now. But we hope they're gonna be here from 6 months from now, hopefully where we have a better idea of what we want them to do and what we want to allow them to do, as opposed to just having an open door where they can come in and do whatever they want right now and go to the zoning board and get a variance and build 75 feet up in the air if they get it. To me, that's just wrong. That's wrong. That's not good governance. And that's why I'm advocating for you to consider these 2 6-month moratoriums.
Okay,
Thank you.
we will consider everything, and believe me, I'm not afraid of anybody. However, we have to consider all angles, and to say that, we're neglectful and we're not considering the environment and our residents, they elected each and every one of us because they believe in us, and we're here to represent, and we don't always have to agree. I don't think that we should be accusing each other of being scared and letting people walk in the door and do what they want. That's not why we're up here. You always use in development the word smart develop, Vision Long Island, develop, we got all those smart awards. The last 3 years, we've gotten smart awards, and we're gonna continue to do that, but we should be in an open manner. And also, every angle that's available, instead of just saying moratorium, that's it, go away. And also, battery energy storage can only go in 2 places here in the town. It's not like they're gonna be popping up everywhere, part of town hall, in 2 places, and it has to be next to the LIPA substation.
That's partially true for properties that are zoned residentially. They can go on more industrial property, but just to put it out there, but there's.
But they can, what does that mean? You would have to change the zone, right?
No, it's permitted industrial zones now. There's no radius requirement for industrial zones.
But it's my understanding it has to go. Wasn't that our understanding that it has to go near the LIPA substation?
If it's,
It's easier for them.
that's the easiest for them, but it can be done without that.
Oh, so it can, okay, so I was under the impression that you
But
can.
very difficult, because then
It
you may be
depends.
crossing over other properties.
It depends,
like
I mean,
that, which
because
is unlikely.
even we're seeing now from proposals
Right.
from people, from developers coming in, it's not even proximity to substations, it's proximity to the main line that goes into the main substation in the town
Right,
of Southampton. There's a number of factors for where and why these things are being cited.
So, I have a question. So if the state comes down, I know they have a task force, right? And their task force identifies 6 months from now, 3 months from now, that the way that these are being done doesn't work anymore. It's all over for anybody with an application, correct?
That's possible.
Possible, no, it's
Yeah.
not, it's more than possible. What I'm saying is that the task force deems that the battery storage units are null and void, they're not good, they're not gonna allow them in the state, okay?
They
It's
take
over,
residence.
correct? Am I correct?
I can't imagine that that's gonna be the eventual.
I don't either, but I'm
deadline, but I
trying to,
guess
I'm
it's a- I
trying to
guess it's a
get some
possibility.
perspective
Yeah.
That
there.
would, you wouldn't need the moratorium and then,
Yeah.
after that,
Well,
I think you would
I
amend
think
your
that you're
zoning
making
to.
You would
my
amend your
point.
zoning to
I think you're
preclude them.
making my point, right? I would not approve anything that was not approved by the task force, that they didn't do their proper vetting,
Well,
period.
I don't think we can
So
hold
you
them, we
can't
can't hold them
until
to a standard
until
that
they
doesn't
come up with their
exist. Yeah.
findings,
We don't know what the
that's gonna
findings
be.
are gonna be
That's
yet.
why the
That's-
And we
moratorium.
don't know if that's gonna be 6 months, 3 months, a year, we don't know the answer to that question,
But if
right?
it goes
We
for
don't
a
care.
long time, I think that's probably a good indication that there's a lot that they have to look at.
Correct.
And so you would wanna know what that was before you move
I
it
definitely
ahead.
wanna know what it is ongoing, and
Has
we're in
anybody
touch
called?
with that.
Has anybody
Matt's
called?
in touch with them. Yes.
And what have they indicated?
So the main goal, without going into too much specifics, because the task force is bound by an NDA, their immediate goal is to figure out the root cause of these fires and then make
Okay.
recommendations as
Which
to
they
changes.
should.
Absolutely.
Anytime you have an
You wanna
increase in
figure out
any
what
type
the
of
issue
incidents, you
is, yeah.
should look into it.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Okay, great.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I would like to ask for this to go for a public hearing.
Both?
Yes.
Okay, we'll put them in the queue.
Well, hold on a second, we have to take a vote. We've got a board here, right? No, to go to public hearing, then you have to, okay, so you're gonna wait for the resolution to come in? Okay, let's see what happens
Well,
with the
the
resolution.
resolution would just be to publish and post the drafts.
Right,
Correct.
okay.
That's the
And you're
resolution.
also still looking for information on the first one, so, that you're gonna supply.
Which we're gonna supply,
Yeah.
yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Let's,
Next.
our last discussion, we have a Fire Marshal Andrew Smith and Craig Zidek with us for discussion about changes to the fire marshal fee codes. And thank you for waiting so patiently. Did you do your training yet, Andrew?
Which training?
I thought you were going to I saw something where,
Oh, we're going to be going to the arson conference in New York City, but that's going to be in November.
that's in November. Wow, they
Yep.
put the paperwork in already?
Yeah, you want to be on top of
Good
things.
for you. Okay, so,
Made the time out. Congratulations, Mr. Still. He's a married man.
You got
He
married?
didn't want anybody to know.
Too late.
Congratulations.
Well, congratulations.
Greg.
Congratulations for joining the institution of marriage.
I just want to say,
Okay.
having worked with you on this for several months, and I want to thank the legal department for all the research they did in, across Nassau and Suffolk County. And Andrew, I want to thank you for going through this and updating the fees, so
I'd just like to say that Andrew has worked, Andrew has worked diligently on this, so I'm gonna let him speak and answer all your
Absolutely.
questions.
All right, so we put together two different categories. That's kind of how we do it now. Installation, which is basically our construction fees, and then our reoccurring fees, which we would call our operating permits. You guys have all the fees up there, right?
Yes, we
I
do,
kind of,
thank you.
I kind of highlighted some of them. The ones that are highlighted are what New York State, specifically Part 1203, say that we should permit on an annual basis. Those are the ones that we're not collecting a fee for now, but I think we should, if we're going to permit, we should collect a fee to process the application, stuff like that. So what you see highlighted is all stuff that we need to be permitting that we don't currently have a fee for. So proposing adding fees for those particular permits. And then if you look in the columns, you'll see all our existing fees. Some of the construction ones were right in line with the other townships, so, I wouldn't recommend changing some of them. Some of them we were very behind the eight ball on, so I recommended, different ways of getting the fees based on, well, for our construction, based on square footage and stuff like that.
What is fruit crop ripening?
Actually, Craig can help you with that one, because I believe we do have something in town with that, right?
Yes, we do. So they bring in bananas and apples and other things that aren't, and then they put them in a room where they bring in a gas that helps to ripen them more quickly. Just like if you take a ripe orange and you put a couple, or a ripe apple and you put a couple that aren't as ripe, and you put them in a paper bag or in a bowl at home, and then they ripen faster. It's the same type of thing. They do it on a commercial basis.
Gotcha. I didn't know we had any of that here.
We do.
That's
We-
why
we have-
sometimes it
we
looks
have
so
at least
great.
one.
Oh, fruit.
Yeah, but this also cover us anything future comes in that we are already set and ready to go with it if we need to.
Yeah, they use titanium dioxide, and I forget what they use for bananas or something, but that gas is, but I'm familiar with what you're talking about.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I couldn't think of it off the top of my head.
And you put bananas with tomatoes, because it helps the tomatoes ripen quicker.
Right.
I do that at home. You always see my tomatoes, there's bananas on top of
Need
it.
to inspect her.
That
Oh,
just
get
cost
over
you
it.
$200.
And a citation. All right, so Andrew, when
There's a couple ones that I added on our construction, and you guys really have to weigh in on if you want to do it or if you don't. We spend a lot of time with the Knox boxes in town. Knox
Yes.
box, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's just a box that has the emergency contact information and the keys to a building, so if the fire department goes there, they could get in easily. I recommend charging a fee for an installation of a Knox box, just because it requires us to go out there a couple times to close it, to inspect it, things like that. Also, there's been mention of accelerated services. Some of the other towns do. I know Brookhaven does it. It's, if a developer or somebody wants to expedite a permit, they don't, want to wait in the normal queue, they can pay an accelerated service fee, which would basically pay for us to do the plan review and the inspections on non-normal working hours, but it would pay, the fee would actually pay the town for that service. That's up to you guys, weigh in on adding those.
I think you have the staff to do that now, right? Do you feel comfortable that you?
There's certain contractors and stuff that'll come in and ask if it's available, just because they're on a time crunch or a scheduling thing with their project. It's not overwhelming. I mean, we're doing pretty good with a normal review process. We're down to about 2 weeks or so.
And if you feel you can handle it, I don't have a problem.
much hazard do we have here? I mean, we have propane and what else? Chemicals,
We
sure,
got, we have
I-
storage of flammable
Splush
combustible
Rash
liquid.
has a lot of chemicals for the pools and chlorine.
We have
and-
Barry Tapes, they have a big cache of
Yeah.
flammable ethanol. They have a burn building back there. We've, you know, Paraco, we've got the big tanks.
That's
We've got
right,
more
yeah.
tanks going in on Cromer Avenue. I know you guys were discussing the battery energy storage systems. Eventually, if that comes down the pike, we're probably gonna have to annually permit those and do inspections at those
Sure.
facilities and stuff like that.
Now, these prices, are they, how similar are they to the prior fees?
So if you look, I have
Did you
two
increase-
columns. I have the two columns, and I know I had spoke to you guys a couple weeks ago at a work
Yes, you did.
session. I'll give you an example. The triennial, we're gonna keep that the way it is. That is 150, and that permit's good for 3 years.
Okay.
A repair facility like a garage or an auto body shop, we're only charging $45. So
Wow.
right now, if you run a repair facility, which is a higher hazard business, you're getting away cheaper than the doctor or the lawyer that just has an office with minimal hazards going on. So we just kind of wanted to bring it up to par with the other townships. I kind of looked into like how much it costs a our top paid fire marshal to get the labor rate to kind of come up with a fee to at least pay for our service and not be too much of a burden to the everyday taxpayer. You know, and this stuff is public safety also, so keep that in mind. But
Well, you did say when you came on board you were gonna do this. So, thank you for
Yeah.
keeping your word.
So, I mean, you could go down, some of this stuff we don't have in our town, a lot of it we do. I know up in Epcot, there's the fence company, they have the pyro, locks on plastics, that's something that we don't have a permit for right now, that we should, I mean, we do the inspections there, we just don't charge anything.
We do it under hazardous materials.
Okay, so we're misapplying it, but if we have a specific one, we could apply it correctly.
Correct.
So if you want a fireworks display, it costs $700.
That's what we have right now. There's no, I didn't propose
No
any change to
right?
that.
Yeah.
But if it's a private display.
Right, there's two
If it's a
different.
public display, then it's only the $200 fee. But
Okay.
there's an additional $500 administrative fee for any private displays. So when they do them at a wedding, at a golf course, or a winery or something like that, there's the additional $500 fee, which helps to defray our overcost time.
Now, I know that you're there because I see you at them. Wherever there's
Oh, yeah,
fireworks,
we're
I'm there. Does this incorporate the charge of you showing up, or is,
Well, that was the idea of the $500 fee, was to help to
Be
defray.
inclusive.
Right, so when Grangeville, when they do them at Grangeville Park, which would be a public display,
right,
they don't get charged that, and, you know, we're there because it's a town event.
right.
So, but when they do them at the raceway, or they do them at some of the wedding venues and so forth, again, it's considered a private event, and that $500 administrative fee helps to defray our
That includes your
overtime costs.
presence there?
Correct.
Okay.
So I just have one question on the place of assembly. I'm a little concerned for our churches in town. So if many of our churches accommodate over 500, to tell all of our churches that they're going from 150 to potentially $700 or $1,000 is quite a jump in religious gathering
So,
places on that.
I mean, that's why it's good to talk about it. So, I mean, if you guys want to make an exception for religious, we'll still do the inspection, but if you don't want to charge or make a different fee
'Cause I
for a
don't see that
religious
it's more
gathering.
work to kind of do the loop around the church and do what you gotta do as opposed to going into some of the private buildings, but I wanna,
I mean, we still inspect the churches just to make sure it's safe for the,
I understand
parishioners
that,
and stuff like that.
but
We don't necessarily have to charge a fee, that you can, make an exception for it, but Part 1203.
churches are getting more and more difficult to function financially. It's
Sure.
just that there's less of attendance,
It's a good
And,
point.
and you're putting, you know, the town's gonna be asking for another $500-600, I think.
So I
just
think-
my
I think
opinion on the
the-
church process, it's a lot to ask for.
I think the good thing is
Struggling,
we passed the town code to omit the fees from the code itself and just have them passed by resolution by the town board. So that's just something we could put in our table of fees that places of worship or whatever are exempt, and we could just publish that with the resolution, and that would take care of that. But again, that's for you guys to decide if you wanted to go that
I want
route.
them inspected, you know what I mean?
Of course, we'll still inspect them, we're just gonna make an exemption from the fee.
You know, we have a lot of small churches that are coming up in the town of Riverhead that are gathering, and we're getting more of them each year, and I don't wanna put a financial hardship upon them, so.
And it's not a lot of churches, so it's not like a huge.
Well, it would apply to
getting more and more.
temples and
We've got a
mosques and
lot- we've
any
got a lot.
place of religious
Yeah, any
worship.
religious
We would still wanna perform a fire safety inspection to make sure the building's safe and things like that,
Yes.
but.
I support that.
But
Perfect.
I'm concerned about raising their fees for the religious organizations aspect of it.
Sure.
Okay, great.
All right.
Guys, be safe out there.
All right.
Thank you. Good job.
Yep.
Thank you, as always.
Thanks, guys.
Devin, will you, I just sent you. Is that being considered or? No, yes? Yeah, hopefully, yeah. I don't know how long it's gonna be before it's here. We might end the session. It's, you all have to leave, right? You know what? I'll get something when we get out because
No,
they,
I'm
most of them.
gonna stay now.
You're gonna stay now?
I changed
Pretty sure
my
it's gonna get-
appointment, so.
Well, by the time it comes, Frank, you can start coming up here. Anyway, this concludes our discussion items for today. So we're gonna move on to reading the resolutions. Thank you.
So that's all, I'm good with all that stuff, but maybe not the place of assembly.
Okay, if the board's ready.
Yes, thank you.
Resolution number 1, approve special event, Chapter 255, application for Racetrack Knott Street 2024 Fall Classic.
Yeah, I just want to make a note on that. I got a call last night from Pete Scalzo saying that everything's going well and he's gonna move away from the use of compound, so it's not an issue during these races. And I just told me to relate that to the board, so I'm relating that message. Okay, so.
Okay, resolution number 2, approve special event, Chapter 255, application for Racetrack Knott Street 2024 Summer Classic. Number 3, approve special event, Chapter 255, application for East End Rowing 14th Annual Snowflake Regatta. Number 4, Riverhead Water District Emerging Contaminants Project assumes lead agency and issues negative declaration pursuant to SECRA. Number 5, Riverhead Water District Ground Storage Tank assumes lead agency and issues negative declaration pursuant to SECRA. Number 6, public interest order in the matter of the increase and improvement of facilities of Riverhead Water District in the town of Riverhead, Suffolk County, New York, consisting of the construction of a new 2.5 mg above-ground water storage tank at East Wind Drive, Wading River, New York, at an estimated cost of $6,560,000. Number 7, approves engineering department request for change order number 3 related to bid for renovation modification of certain portions within Town Hall at 4 West 2nd Street. And we have 3 of those, so it's change order number 3, number 2, and number 1. So that brings us to resolution number 10, capital project number 12101, budget adjustment. Number 11, 1309 Old Country Road, site plan, EIS budget transfer. Number 12, authorizes purchase of spreaders for the Highway Department. Number 13, awards rebid for Ford Auto Parts. Number 14, extends bid for the removal of household hazardous waste. Number 15, sets the fees for the fall recreation programs. Number 16, authorizes the town clerk to publish and post notice to bidders for Dow Flake Extra 83 to 87% calcium chloride or equal. Number 17, determination and emergency declaration that the structure located at 16 Doris Avenue, Riverhead, also known as Suffolk County Tax Map Number 600-105-2-45, is unsafe is in imminent danger of collapse, poses a hazard and danger to the public, and orders the town engineering department to facilitate the demolition of said structure and to assess demolition, removal, and administrative costs against the subject property. Number 18, appoints a part-time traffic control specialist. Number 19, adopts a local law to amend Chapter 255 of the Riverhead Town Code entitled Parades, Assemblies, and Special Events. Number 20, ratifies the termination of a maintenance mechanic 2. Number 21, ratifies the authorization of employee number GFZ000541 to attend a training course. Number 22, authorization for 2 town employees to attend a seminar. Number 23, ratifies the authorization for the supervisor to execute a stipulation agreement. Number 24, ratifies the reinstatement of 2 police department employees. Number 25, schedules public hearing for the special permit application of Sandy Pond Mini Golf, 1495 Roanoke Avenue, Riverhead, New York, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 600-82-1-12.1. Number 26, 2023-672. This had been tabled, so the board obviously would have to untable it. Assumes lead agency status and issues negative declaration pursuant to SECRA for the special permit and site plan applications of Sandy Pond Links Mini Golf Course, 1495 Roanoke Avenue. Number 27, approves the submission of a grant application to the New York Unified Court System.
What's that grant for?
They've applied for that before. It's for, they're aiming for $30,000. They're going to use it for furniture and things of that nature if they get the funds.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Devin. In a moment, I'm going to ask for a first and a second to enter into executive session to discuss the following. 2 legal matters. Frank Geisler, Esquire, matters surrounding update on pending litigation between the town of Riverhead Sewer District and Suffolk County, and that will be with Michael and Rotha. And then the second matter is matters surrounding update on pending litigation between town of Riverhead and Carl McVeigh, and that will be with Howard. And then we have a contractual matter, matters surrounding contractual agreement between Chief Hegemiller and the town of Riverhead. And can I please have a first and a second to go into executive session? Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? All
sit here all
opposed?
day.
So moved. Thank you, everyone. Great weather out there. Please be safe, and see you next week.